The problem is we can't select four people, Thomas's clients if they're already grandfathered. New construction has to be pre-existing conditions are. So when she says, where does this end, it doesn't, it doesn't. Unless the code were to be more than, and we just completely change. Which I don't see that. Yep. And then we are going into a session on
I'm not wanting to get back, but for a week, I'm going to get rid of
Oh man, all right, let's get started. Good morning, and welcome to the Saturday, June 13th, 2020, 10 a.m. regular meeting of the Long Beach Town Council. Thank you for coming. We can recognize most of you out there. However, it is a little bit weird, everybody wearing face pieces. And for me, my glasses are fogged up, so if I lose place, it's because I can't see. That said, the meeting's called to order, and as we normally do in our regular meetings, we'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask that we dig as deep as we can in this moment of silence, because right now this country needs us to soul search as deeply and as hard as we possibly can. So with that, if we could stand and take a 20-second moment of silence, it would be great. Thank you. We'll now say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Councilman Serby couldn't be here today. The rest of the council's here, as you can see. Are there any additions to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second? Awesome. Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Ms. Roberston?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? There's a bunch of them.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes?
I read through almost all of them in the last few days, so there's a few typos, but we got them corrected, but everything else is good to go.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Ms. Roberson?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. And Heather, thank you, and Kathy, thank you very much for getting this car. Amazing job. Council announcements, we'll start with Mr. Alger.
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. I?
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Lehman?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Roberson?
Just very quickly, I want to give kudos to the school for the way graduation went this year. I know that was an extremely long day, but I think that the families really liked the way that everything was done. So
Schick?
I just want to announce that I attended a virtual RAFT meeting. That's R-A-F-T. It's a resiliency meeting along with the town manager and our planning director, actually our whole planning staff, and as well as the Chamber of Commerce, the Planning Commission, and many other people on the virtual call. It was really well done. We broke out into small groups. We discussed resiliency in our community, the challenges we're facing in the next 10, 20 years, and not just resiliency as far as stormwater or rising tide issues, but resiliency in dealing with emergency management, and dealing with pandemic, and dealing with all the things that our community is going to have to make it through and push through, and how we're going to lead and make changes in our community's sustainability for that time. And I think a lot of good things are coming out of this. We are going to receive aid from, this is a coalition between ODU, UVA, VCU, and their students in their graduate programs, and they're willing to give us their time and expertise and to review our comp plan to make sure it's going to meet, when we go to approve our new comp plan, make sure that it's going to meet the standards that to really address resiliency in our community for the next 10 or 20 years. And I just really look forward to where that program is going to go and what that's going to mean for our community. So things are happening online now, and it's a little bit different, and you maybe don't see us in a room all the time, but just know that there are a lot of good things still. We're not letting this whole situation stop the forward momentum on some of these things. So
Thank you. I just would like to say thank you to the community for being so patient with this whole COVID-19 pandemic situation we've been in. It's been kind of difficult to juggle all the information and news, and trying to figure out when to open and when to stay closed, and what to open and what to close, and all this other stuff. And I think unfortunately some parts of the life as we knew it before are probably going to be changed forever. And we're going to have to, like Ms. Schick said, we're going to have to get with the program and be resilient and be able to foster the changes as they come about. Like wearing one of these, it's very difficult for me anyway. I don't like it, but I do it. But again, I want to say thank you for your patience. I think knock on wood, we've done a tremendous job. The town staff has done a phenomenal job of keeping the operations running. Again, we didn't have to lay anyone off. People continue to be paid. People continue to work. We really didn't miss any steps at all. We were able to develop a budget, a balanced budget, a great budget, and so kudos to everybody involved, especially our citizens, for being so patient. With that, we'll go to item 8, which is presentations, and it's my honor at this time to present Mr. Danny Smith, his 20 years of service with the town of Colonial Beach.
All right.
And Danny, we have a check, we have a plaque, and we have a 20-year pin. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Danny's also retiring.
Yeah.
So you get it all.
Yeah.
You get like everything.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come over there. Or, usually we have Danny come up here. Are you gonna say something?
Yes.
Okay.
Just correction on his name. I'm Danny's brother. His name is Daniel.
Daniel. Okay.
Daniel Smith.
Okay.
For the record.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Daniel. Okay. Okay, Daniel.
All right.
Are you his older brother?
I'm one of his brothers.
Okay. Are you
Yeah,
older?
I am older.
Yeah. Older brothers always make those connections.
Yeah. But thank you all.
You bet. Thank you. Well, thank you for letting your older brother work for the town of Colonial Beach.
Oh, yes.
Anybody who's been here for any length of time knows.
Yeah, he's been there for 20 some
You
years.
see-
that's a blessing.
Yes.
And he enjoyed every bit of it.
That's awesome.
I remember I have encouraged him 20 years ago to try to become a member of Colonial Beach family to work in Colonial Beach. And he was successful, got on board, and it looked like he did well.
Yes, it's
So,
huge dedication.
I'm very happy for him.
Yeah, we are too. We're happy to have had him, and thank you so much for sharing, Daniel, with us. We
Sure,
appreciate it.
my pleasure.
Yeah, I'll come over there and present to him. Give me one of these first.
All right.
And then we'll stand here. Here, you hold the plaque, and you hold the check.
Yeah, all right.
And when y'all are done, can you turn this way?
If you like, no problem.
Come on up there.
Okay, we can do the good elbow one more time?
Yeah.
Yeah, get it up good here.
There we go. I guess if we don't agree, we could all pull our masks down for a minute.
Can y'all turn this way?
Sure.
I can get one. I can't pick it up.
It's the craziest thing. All right, that's awesome. That's a tremendous amount of dedication to stay in the service for 20 years these days. It doesn't happen very often.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could I just add that in my short time of living in the community, every time I've seen Danny/Daniel, he's always had a smile on his face. Whether he's riding a trash truck or helping dig a ditch, he's always had a smile on his face. And I think just your attitude and what you've given our community, you're a role model, and I hope people that work for the town follow in your footsteps. Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is the CARES Act discussion with Quinn Robertson and our council, Jim Cornwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As you're probably aware, you can't hear? It's gonna be two problems. One, the mask problem. This thing on now? Can you hear? Can you hear now? As you're probably aware, the federal government provided funding to the state government for under the CARES Act for assistance on to fight the coronavirus. Not working? Okay, now. Okay, I'll start again. As you're probably aware, the federal government provided money to the state government to fight the coronavirus. It's called the CARES Act relief funds. The state then took a portion of that money and distributed it to the localities. Westmoreland County, under the schedule, is to receive $1.5 million. The memorandum from the Commonwealth of Virginia, from Aubrey Lane, the Secretary of Finance, provided that the county should distribute a portion of those funds on an equitable basis to the towns. And in fact, the counties must ensure that an equitable share of the CRF funds it receives are shared with and granted to each town within its jurisdiction. In order to receive those funds, each county had to sign a certificate for receipt of Coronavirus Relief Fund payments. Well, I have the one that Westmoreland signed, and signed by the county administrator, the chairman of the board, and the treasurer. And it repeats the same language. An equitable share of CRF funds received pursuant to the certification shall be shared with and granted to each town within its jurisdiction. An issue has arisen, and I think we invited the county administrator and the chairman of the board here today to discuss this, and they could not make it. but an issue has arisen about the distribution of the funds from the county to the town. I think if it's distributed on a population basis, the town would receive about $300,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The county has adopted a resolution relating to how they're going to divide the money, and we've been informed that we have to apply to the county for our share of the funds and specify as to the uses that the funds are to be made. I think that's contrary to both the Secretary of Finance's memorandum and the document that the chairman of the board and the county administrator signed that said those funds are to be granted to the town. Now, I recognize the fact that if we screw up and use the funds for some purpose other than is permitted by law, that the county could be held responsible for payback. And we've offered and discussed with the county, signing an agreement with the county, that if somehow we fail to comply with the guidelines for release of the funds, that we will guarantee repayment, including the fact that the county could take that money out of the funds that they pass down to us, including sales tax. That doesn't seem to have gotten any traction with the county. And so, again, I would have liked to have had a discussion with the county administrator and the chairman about that, because I do believe that the equitable share that the town should receive from the county is $300,000. My understanding is almost all jurisdictions in Virginia, and being a county attorney for Lancaster County, that's what we're doing. We're sharing equitably with our towns based on population. And in fact, the state shared the money with the counties based on population. So we felt like there was an equitable share, should be the $300,000, that those funds can only be used under the guidelines of the Act, which I think the town is perfectly willing to guarantee. And there are things I think council may want to do with those funds that we shouldn't have to go to the county and ask for permission, because clearly all these documents say that it's a grant. So that's kind of the background for this. And again, I was hoping that the county administrator and the chairman of the board would appear to discuss this, but for whatever reason they couldn't make it today. So anyway, I throw it back open to.
I have a question,
Yes.
if it's okay. I had heard at some point in time that the county not only was not distributing us the money, but that they were telling us how to spend it, or that they were going to spend the lion's share of the money on what they felt was necessary for the town to spend. Is that
Mr.
okay?
Tribbett here?
I actually am here.
Okay. I think Mr. Tribbett discussed that with the county board of supervisors and was an advocate for the town in our position. I think we have two problems. One, the control of the money by the county. In other words, we have to go and ask for what we want to spend the money for. And the second is the amount of money, because I understand the county wants to spend the money on social services departments and things like that, rather than granting the money to the town.
Right. Can I just add to that? I was under the impression that we already paid taxes to the county for social services and judicial services and libraries and things like that. So I'm kind of perplexed at why we're not getting the money that we should receive, and that we have to pay an extra tax, it seems like, 'cause that's basically what it seems like it is, to the county. So maybe, Mr. Supervisor, could you explain what you know?
Well, I'll try to do the best I can.
Okay.
And I'd asked Mr. Osami to be here today, and as you did, and he's invited you to come to any of his meetings in the county. I think was the response back.
Okay.
So it's actually turned into quite an interesting thing, and you know we've spent a lot of hours on it already. I'll just tell you, it was back in May, and I may repeat a little bit of what your attorney has said, but I just want to make sure I have everything that we have discussed as a board, because the position that I took at the last meeting was just that you asked about, the fact that the town was told that they would be given $313,090.40 And then all of a sudden, there's requests coming into the county to approve, one of them from Bay Agent, which was gonna take 19,000 some dollars off of that amount. The other was gonna be from Social Services, which was gonna take, I wanna say 31,000 some dollars off of that amount. And so I specifically asked that question more than once at the June meeting, on June the 8th, about, you know, we're giving the town 313,000, now we're gonna dictate how that's spent. The county administrator's comment was, it's only fair. Isn't it not fair that Westmoreland County Social Services get a portion? Shouldn't Bay Aging and all these other organizations that are asking, because the town is 1/5 of the county? I asked the chairman of the board to make a comment about that, which he wouldn't, because that was my position. Why have we passed a resolution that was signed in May? And now we're turning around and we're going to dictate how the town is going to spend their funds. And I'm not saying that they're not good causes. Colonial Beach does have people contact social services. Bay Aging does things in the town. But, I mean, if somebody wants to send a $200,000 request from the town other than you, does that mean that we're going to entertain that too? And, because they're part of the county, or, you know, I think it's unfortunate it's gone this way. The county administrator said that unfortunately he didn't get guidance from the federal government on how to distribute these funds other than an equitable amount. But the position I took after talking to some town officials was the fact that we're not arguing that there's a lot of need for this $1.7 million. We're just arguing about the amount that's been allotted to the town, and now you're going to figure out how you want to spend it. And I brought this up more than once. We didn't approve either one of these requests from Bay Aging or Social Services currently, based, I'm assuming, on me asking these questions and wanting further guidance. And I think that's what needs to occur. I don't know what you're going to do. You know, moving forward, you can come down and meet with the Board of Supervisors, or maybe pass a resolution or something saying we should be the ones dictating how our funds are used. I don't know the answer to that, but even from a citizen standpoint, and reading the documentation that's been provided from the state, I don't see where that conclusion comes in. And I tried to make that argument with the county administrator, and his argument was Richmond County only gave 50% to Warsaw. So I don't understand that mentality from a prudent person trying to look at the facts of what was provided and just listen to your attorney. I absolutely agree with him. I'll be more than glad to take any position that the town wants me to take, because from a personal standpoint, I think I can see it pretty clearly. But from a representative standpoint for the town, I want to do what the town wants me to do. And if it's to let the county do whatever they want to do, then that's fine. But you know, I'm here to support the town. I live in the town. I represent the town. I understand I'm only 1/5, and believe me, I've been told more than one time that I'm 1/5, and that the other 4 are probably not going to support me on some of these things. So, you know, that's all I can tell you about it. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to argue the point, because I think at some point in time it's going to turn into another legal issue if they continue to spend the money that they've allocated clearly in that document that's been signed. And I'm not a lawyer, but I can read and listen to your attorney. He seems to interpret it the same way I think anybody that would read the resolution. It's right in the resolution from the county that the board approved. So unless you tell me otherwise, any money that's taken away from that $313,000, I'm going to ask that question at every meeting. And when the county administrator says it's all about fairness, I'm going to say has nothing to do with fairness. It has to do with what's legal. And if he has no guidance, then I, as a supervisor, cannot vote to support something that could turn into a legal issue when I give you something and then I'm dictating how I'm going to use it and take it away from you without any input from you at all. So I wouldn't be able to support that unless you told me, no, you support it that way, and then I'm fine with that. But so if you have any other questions about that, I mean, I've provided documentation, as you probably, as you know, because I've provided documentation. I assume everybody here knows it. But there was some requests made too from Westmoreland County school systems as well as Colonial Beach school systems, and I don't know if you want me to talk about that or not. So if you do, you can ask me to, and I'll be more than glad to go through how all that occurred. But if not, then you know I'm here to answer any questions that you have and to see if we can resolve this.
I believe we have some council members that want to ask you a question. Yes.
Mr. Truitt, not that I don't have full faith in our town attorney and our staff, but what's the county attorney's stance on this?
The county attorney said no comment, and he was at that meeting, and he didn't say a word either way. I can only tell you that Mr. Rasavi has told me, as well as the board of supervisors, that he has reached out to Mr. Lane. I think he's the chief financial officer for the state, and that he's basically told him he can spend the money any way you want to spend it. I find that hard to believe, but that's what he said, and I can only take him for what he said. I've had no contact with the state agencies, nor would I. As a representative, I'd have no reason. I think that's something that the town manager and the county administrator would have to pursue, and not me as a representative. But I know that this is going to evidently be a dispute that's not going to be resolved easily. It doesn't look like, but I've relayed the information. But the county attorney has said nothing, to my knowledge, to the board.
When's our next meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry you asked me that. I don't know when it is. I should know that right off the top of my head because we've got a couple special meetings coming up, but normally the regular meetings are the first Monday of the month, but I'll let you know by the end of the day, the date of that.
Okay, so I think that'd be like the 6th maybe or something of July.
Well, they've been changed some because we have one on the 23rd, and I don't know whether anything is going to occur during that year because I know there's some public hearings. We're trying to play catch up to numerous things that's been going on, so I don't want to give you a date and time without, I haven't got anything officially in writing.
Okay.
And that's the only reason I can't tell you today when that next regular meeting is going to be, because I'm not.
It sounds like it might be after our next regular meeting.
I think it will be.
So, can I propose that, our staff draft a statement that explains how Colonial Beach is going to process the money, and that we are happy to accept requests from Bay Aging Social Services, the school, and any other entity that requires this funding. Kind of state our position on that and how the process should work, and reinforces the allocation based on population. Something simple, but something clear. And then for our approval at our next meeting, we can all make sure we take a look at this statement, and then we need to go to the meeting. I agree with Mr. Rizzotti, honestly, that we should be there. We have to go to Montrose. We cannot always expect Montrose to come to us. And I personally will take the statement if I need to. That's fine. So, great. Vicki says she's coming with me. So, we've got to have communication both ways. I appreciate the work you're doing there, and I think we just need to support you in it, in the ways that we can. And so, if we can draft something up that clarifies that the monies that are going to services that need it, that do affect us, Bay Aging certainly provides an enormous amount of service in our community. I mean, they should be requesting funds from us. That's normal.
I'd just like to say that would be one of the questions I would have is, I'd like to see Bay Aging's request for the funding.
Right.
I'd like to see library's request for the funding. I'd like to know why. What's the additional request for? We pay Bay Aging through our taxes. We pay Bay Aging. We pay the libraries. We have a library next door. We just replaced the roof for $250,000. So I'm just, all these different entities, I'd like to know, is this a need caused by the virus? Is it because they've lost money? Because most of them have just shut down. Not Bay Aging completely, but transportation and things like that. That's the kind of issues, the questions I'd like to have asked and answered.
I just want to show that we are going to manage the money, and we will have a process for that.
I also think that we have sent a request for monies, for the monies we've spent for this CARES Act so far. I don't know, have we heard back on any of that?
Yes, we have submitted requests for a certain amount of monies coming back to us. The money's supposed to be used between now and December, right? Predominant amount of overhead costs is going to be incurred in labor, specifically overtime. So if you can imagine, that's an enduring cost for the next 4, 5, 6 months. We've been given the impression that the grant monies have been being treated kind of like a first come, first served basis. But it even complicates it even further out. I apologize because the mask, I'm sure, is doing it. When this first kicked off, well before we had this particular conflict, I had Aging reach out to me and say, hey, I have great news for you. Your annual cost this year is going to go down by roughly 2/3.
That's what I'm talking about.
So if I have Aging calling me saying our costs are going to go down roughly by 2/3, then why am I trying to give Aging more money?
Yeah, well, even more, why would we spend money when the virus isn't gone? If you listen to what everybody says, there's potential to go into the fall, and we're gonna need the monies to support the town efforts during the fall as well.
So I think the difference truly is to council and mayor, what I see, at least from my perspective, and I think the attorney said it well, as well as the county supervisor, I agree completely with both of those statements. It's a difference in philosophy. I've had the opportunity to reach out to a local citizen that was pretty immersed in the federal part of the CARES Program Act. That lives in town, that was a lobbyist that helped kind of craft, if not be involved in the CARES Act formulation. And the idea is that you try to kick as much of the federal monies down to the lowest level of government possible to do the most good. Now, I agree with Mr. Trivett that all of the things that the county wants to do are very admirable, but they're county level activities. For example, social services. That is absolutely a county activity, and it does need to be addressed, and it's in their right to do so. However, we as a town have different needs. We're a tourist town. The county's mostly agrarian. We have to think about signs telling the tourists what to do when they come to our town. Social distancing. Our needs, quite frankly, are very different than what is 2 miles away from us, which is farmland. It makes perfect sense what the county wants to do with their money. What we get with our money, we need to focus it and refocus it on things that attack COVID. And there's a disconnect. So I think the problem is it feels more like a garnishment than anything else. How can you say, here's your paycheck, and oh, by the way, as I give you your paycheck, you're going to spend 60% of it on this type of grocery? It's not correct. I value the point to say that our citizens are county citizens and they use social services. I don't disagree with that. That is exactly where our county citizens pay that tax. And that is exactly why Westmoreland received $1.5 million and the town of Colonial Beach only received $313,000. So I think we don't have a philosophical disagreement where the needs are. And oh, by the way, whether it's county or town, we have to adhere to the CARE guidelines process, which we can't just willy-nilly spend it. It has to be COVID-related activities. And I do believe that the county should focus on things like social services. Maybe even, I don't know what they have planned. I think they wanted to shave off some money for the sheriff's department. We'll have the police department. I have an enforcement, supplement that I need to do as well. So why don't we let Colonial Beach take their $313,000, give it to the leadership in our town, and make those educated and good decisions versus it being dictated by us.
Yes.
This thing is on, but I don't know how well you can hear me. You have to show how the money is spent, obviously.
Agreed.
That's a captain obvious. You have to have your list and what that cost is. Correct. Okay. Do you have a list that you can share with us that we can see what it is? It's on. Oh, okay, sorry. Thanks. It was on. I must have turned it off. To see where it is that you want those entities to go?
Absolutely, we can provide a list of what we've already submitted.
Okay.
I know that a lot of overtime on Beach Ambassador program that has been out there and about, just to cut through the shaft and give you what we can talk about, has been a piece. The police department has had to log in extra overtime. If most people noticed, the 2 electronic signs we've been able to obtain, one located in the vicinity of Colonial Avenue and Washington Avenue, one on Castlewood parking lot area to tell people to remind social distancing, and to give out COVID-related messages, which is very paramount to how we operate as a tourist town. And sanitation expenses, whether it's hand sanitizer, additional cleaning supplies, that sort of thing, because we're having to go through our public restrooms on an hourly, if not additional 2 or 3 hours cycles to keep those things clean. So we're burning through sanitation stuff as well. And we recognize that there's going to be some stuff, let's say in November, that is going to be a game changer. Maybe we get that second spike of this COVID stuff in September and October, and the governor might put out additional guidelines or change direction in what's required from us as a town. So we would like to make sure that we responsibly spend that money according to the needs of COVID under the guidelines, but also recognize that this should not be a sprint to spend money. This should not be a race to spend it all. We want to be responsible and stretch that money over the amount of time that we have. Because there are additional funding cycles being discussed at the federal and state level. They're having a hard time getting it passed. So we have to be pragmatic and say this is what we know we should have today. We should be able to expect more funding, but we can't forecast that unknown factor.
And the school should come from our funds.
Well, the school is going to receive additional funding through separate care acts according to what they have, and they've already received, well, they haven't received the money, but it's already been put out that they've received roughly, I want to say $260,000, or at least eligible for that money. The deadline application for them is in August the 1st, I believe it is. And if you go to the Virginia Department of Education's website, you're going to see that they have and I don't remember the nomenclature, CARES Act 2, they're going to have additional funding come their way as well, probably faster than us. For people who work with grants, fire departments, police departments, and schools, there are a ton of grants out there. For small municipality, there's a fraction thereof. So if you go to the Virginia Department of Education, and if you get any political messages from state politicians, they're stressing the fact that they anticipate more funding coming to the education facilities across the state.
Okay. That's a little bit, but
I
okay,
think-
can I ask you a question too?
Yeah.
All right. All right, so all 5 entities of the county technically get this $313,000, this 1.5 split. Is that what Mr.
I didn't understand the question. You're saying, dude,
313,000 is based upon our population.
yeah,
That's
from the
not
census,
the amount.
that's
So if
correct.
they have another entity in the county, they would get the amount based off of their population.
What are they giving Montrose?
Montrose gets like, it's very minimal. It's
Well, they don't have a high population.
No,
I mean,
it's not almost like this.
only a couple thousand, it's not very much at all. The Montrose got, it's in the resolution, I think.
I mean, the population of Montrose is like 200 people.
Yeah, and I want to say the amount that they went by, it's $84 or $87 something per resident is how they come up with that calculation.
Okay, but isn't each entity,
No.
don't they all have the same population?
No.
No,
Isn't that,
They split us 5 ways.
the county has 5 districts that you're exactly right, and they're evenly, they try to evenly distribute, each district has about the same amount of residents.
all right, that's what I'm
But
getting.
there's not necessarily an entity to deliver money to in each of those districts.
Correct.
I guess another populated area would be Stratford Harbor, I don't know.
I think the best example or the counterpart to I think where we're trying to go with the conversation is probably Montrose. Montrose and Colonial Beach were, because their townships were completely set out and said, this is how much money Colonial Beach is going to get, this is how much money Montrose is going to get. I don't think he kept that mechanism in place countywide.
No, it's just for towns. The town of Montrose is gonna get $33,949.56, and the town of Columbia Beach was supposed to get $313,090.40.
Is the same thing with the trying to pay the additional social services and stuff, is that being imposed upon Montrose?
It is actually, and Mr. Rasavi made the statement at the meeting that they had no problem with it.
It's not true.
Well, because for them, it's like $100 difference.
Yeah.
So, why would they fight that?
Something from nothing is nothing.
I think one of the big misnomers in all this is that for some reason it seems there's an appearance that this is this is the end of it. You get your money and it all ends, it all goes away. Well, I got news for you. At any minute, the federal government could say that all buildings have to be placarded, marked, you have to have arrows with ways to move, you have to have hand sanitizing areas, you have to have some kind of temperature taking devices. All of this is going to cost a tremendous amount of money because you're talking every municipal building in the town of Colonial Beach, owned by the town of Colonial Beach. That includes all the workplaces. That would be the police stations, the public works, this building right here. I mean, conceivably, the next time we come in here, somebody could be at the door taking your temperature before you walk in here. And those are all going to come with a dollar cost.
And I think to answer the question directly, if the state had said, Westmoreland County, you get $1.5 million and stopped, okay, they would get $1.5 million and they could share that as they chose. But the state didn't do that. It specifically said an equitable share of the funds shall be shared with and granted to each town. So that's the difference. If they simply said, Westmoreland, you got 1.5, it's yours. As long as you spend it in accordance with all the guidelines, you can spend it. But then they went the second step and said, now you share it with an equitable basis with the towns. Now, and I'll be the first to admit, the county is saying, well, an equitable basis means we take money to social services, we take money to aging, we take money to, well, that's okay, but again, I get back to who makes that decision. I think the town, it's a grant to the town and we share it with the town. And therefore, the town has a right to make decisions. And there's other uses for the funds that this council may want to look into once we are assured that we have the funds, we know what we're getting, not just contributions to the costs and so forth. There are other matters that can be done.
Jim, what if, hypothetically, if the town had already spent $310,000 because of this virus, for whatever reason, that we may have had to have done that, then what? I mean, are they,
If you can meet the guidelines with expenditures that you've made, I understand you can reimburse yourself.
Yeah, I mean, but we can't if we don't have it. Yeah.
Mayor, if I can give a point of comparison to back up the attorney, in Allegheny County where I live in, I think most of the counties in Southwest Virginia, they're allocating based on population. There's no questions asked. There are 2 towns in Allegheny County. They allocate it based on population. So it's something that's been done. I don't know the percentage of counties that are using technology, but it's probably the preferred way. So
I think that's the law, actually.
It is.
Yeah.
Fauquier
This done by the census.
allocated it to Warrington. We researched that.
Good. Well, as county attorney for Lancaster County, Lancaster County had each town execute an agreement saying, this is your percentage based on your population, and we're going to give you the money. You have to use it in conformity with the regulation. If you don't, you got to pay it back. And if you don't pay it back, we get to take away your sales tax to pay our sales back. And I think that's part of the county's concern here, that if it gives the town of Colonial Beach $300,000, Colonial Beach spends it on things it shouldn't spend it on, then they're going to come looking to the county for reimbursement. But I would think that the town would be perfectly willing to guarantee repayment if it's.
Can we bring that to their next meeting? Will you draft?
I have the agreement
Yeah.
drafted and I've circulated it.
Great, okay. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I meant by having a statement and a process in place so that when we go to the county, and I mean, physically we'll go to the meeting, we are taking responsibility. I mean, I don't wanna, think that we're not responsible for this money. We're responsible for this money and we fully understand that.
And I understand that, but nowhere do they say that. That's not what they've implied. What they've implied is that they're just gonna do it. They never said in there that we're concerned with how you're gonna spend it. That was never on the table. What was on the table was, here's what we're gonna do with the money that was allocated to you. We're gonna spend it in these 4 or 5 areas. And I think one of them was even libraries at some level.
I believe libraries claim to
Well, just to clarify that, Mr. Mayor, the very first meeting of this, Mr. Rasavi just used the library as an example.
Okay.
Because they made masks and stuff, and he used that as an example, but we haven't seen any request.
Okay.
But it is the Board of Supervisors have been delegated the authority to approve every request is the issue. And I even asked at that meeting about, you know, what's appearing here looks like it's gonna be a first come, first served basis. So basically, if you get all those requests in, the county administrator says, we do that in Long Beach too. All that money could be gone, you end up with nothing, which is what some of you kind of alluded to already today. So that's the concern that I think you have to be aware of, because of the fact that if they're spending money that you have no idea, which I would have no idea either until I actually showed up at a meeting to vote on it, and I probably wouldn't even receive the information until that meeting or until the day before, so I would have no way of telling you this is what's coming up. And that's been the norm here recently, which, you know, shouldn't be the norm, but I don't get anything electronic. It's all in a book that comes to me either the day I show up for a meeting or on a Friday before the meeting, so it's kind of hard for me to really share information until, you know, so after the fact.
Right. Was there a budget given to you electronically ahead of time, or did you?
You know, I got the budget the day I showed up for the meeting.
The
187 pages of it, and I complained about that too, but I'm one person.
Wow.
You know, and if you watch the minutes or watched it on TV, you would see that I basically got ridiculed by the county, by the chairman of the board, because, you know, he thought I was slapping all of them in the face, and that's the word he used, thinking that, and this is public record, so I don't mind repeating it, but I question why we would get a document like that we're there to approve and ask questions about, and this is the first time I'd seen it. And, you know, but he thought that was insinuating nobody else had seen it. Well, I told him then, I don't know whether anybody else has seen it or not. I'm gonna tell you, I haven't seen it. And it's not fair to me,
That's the budget.
or the people that I represent, to come to a meeting and vote on something which has probably been the norm forever.
It has.
You know,
Really?
Pardon me?
He used to get, sorry, thanks. It would be the Wednesday or the Thursday before the meeting when Larry would get his binder. So I don't know why they're not getting that to you. They would send a delivery person. It was somebody in the county that drove it up and left it on the side porch. Fast. I mean, say I need this thing, you know.
unfortunately, Ms. Robertson, I've done that, and, you know, that doesn't, you can ask for anything. Doesn't mean you're gonna get it. And, you know, so either I support the county or I go and vote no to every single thing that comes up, you know, and that's kind of difficult to do too, because when you're in opposition to everything and then you need something, they're not gonna support you. You know, I've tried to take a new approach at different things, and I hope that some of those things will happen as far as at least getting something. I mean, we have some people on that board that don't use computers or don't have an iPhone and don't, I mean, everything has to be in this book. And I'm okay with that, you know, with them. But I'm not okay with that with me, because I want to see it and read it and understand it, so that when it comes up, I know something about it, and I can be prepared to ask questions or make the people who I represent at the town level aware of it in case they've got a position on it. Just like all of this. I mean, I've been in constant contact with the town manager to ensure that he knew what was going on in case he didn't. And I, you know, I'm hoping those things will change, and I say that every single time I see the county administrator that I really want to see in my lifetime of being there, and it might only be 4 years. But us to try to change things so where we work together instead of the town doesn't know what's going on until it's too late and somebody's decided their fate for them. And that's what concerns me about these COVID money, that it's already going to be decided. But I will tell you, at least the chairman of the board backed down, because I made an issue of it more than once at that meeting about, I would like for you to tell me that those funds, Bay Agent's request was $191,000, and I asked him, are you telling me $19,000 is coming out of the town of Colonial Beach's funds for that request? The other request was for social services, $157,000. Those aren't exact numbers, but it's in the ballpark. But are you telling me those funds are coming out of $313,000? And you can go look at the minutes. You can look at it on TV, and I don't know how good it is, but we were, you know, it was live, and I'm sure it's posted on our website. And that's when the chairman said, we're not gonna address either one of these issues today. For whatever reason, I don't know, because I'm gonna continue to make an issue of it. Because if he says it's gonna come out of that 13,000, I'm gonna vote no. Unless the town has sent something down there saying, this is how we authorize that 313,000 to be. Because if it turns into a legal issue, I'm not gonna be one way and you're the other way. We're gonna be on the same page, either way, because I'm here to support you and support the people that live in the town of Palm Beach. And I'm not saying at all, and I think they were trying to turn it into that down there, that I'm saying the social services isn't important, that I'm saying BJ. I'm not saying that at all. All of those things are important. But it has nothing to do with that and who they are, because it's just like if you come and make a request because you have a business and you say, I need 300,000 because I done had to do all this work and all this stuff that should come out of those funds. What's going to keep the county from approving it? Unless the board of supervisors, because we have to approve every request the board of supervisors does, not the county administrator. But I can tell you right now, anything he brings to the board of supervisors is most likely going to get approved. And it may be a 4-1 vote, but that's what it's going to be. That's how it's going to be. So, there's a place on our agenda every month for you to come. Anybody from the town that represents the town. And, I don't want to prolong this, but that EMS thing, I just tried. I went all out to try to do something with that even, and it got nowhere. But I'll tell you, you did mention Sheriff's Office, you didn't mention EMS, but that's two other things that money is going to be designated for, and it's going to be a percentage of your money, most likely. And I asked about that. So we have our own police department. But the county Sheriff's Department covers the whole county is the answer. EMS covers the whole county is the answer, and we're 1/5 of the county. So you're just going to have to look at this thing and determine how you want to.
It's probably a great idea for someone else to go. Whether you know or don't know, I went to probably 10 or more of the meetings back when I first became a vice mayor, and then when I became the mayor. And most of it was smooth. And then Mr. Lehman, myself, and our town manager at the time had a meeting, and it didn't go smooth at all. And I learned at that very moment, at least the impression was, I won't speak for both of us, I'll speak for myself, was that at some level we were a lesser entity than everyone else. And quite frankly, there were some statements that were made that I proved were extremely untrue just days later, and in that meeting. And it was almost a carnival show, quite frankly, is what it reminded me of. Dallas, he was there. And I realized at that point in time that the relationship between the town and the county was extremely poor. Not so much from our end, but just from the way we were perceived. And right or wrong, I thought it was extremely unprofessional to do it in a meeting like that first. What was said was not true. I vetted that out, proved that out. And I just lost all interest of ever going to another meeting, quite frankly, to a town hall meeting with them. And that went on.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, I would just tell you, I feel your frustration.
Yeah.
And I'm there now, and even when I was campaigning for this position, I knew it wasn't good, and it's even worse than I suspected, because when the county administrator can tell you the other four aren't going to support that, and he can tell you how they're going to vote, that's not them telling me, that's him telling me. That tells me a story, and that's concerning. It would be just like Mr. Robertson telling anybody, well, you bring anything you want to us, but I know how the majority is going to vote on this thing. That's how it is. So just don't waste your time. So unfortunately, they're going to find out I'm not like that. I might lose, with the vote or whatever, but they're going to know my position, and you can watch any of those meetings and know that I don't sit there, doesn't matter what the issue is, and not ask questions and want more depth and detail, even if it involves the whole county, because I represent the whole county. And so,
well, Vicki volunteered with me. I just that's on public record.
Well, and I'm here to stand behind you and support you. One thing that I would ask, though, I would ask this in the future, because some of you know what's been going on for the last week. And every time there's been a phone call down there or somebody sent something down there, I do commend Mr. Rosali for contacting me and explaining it to me. and sending me a copy of whatever it is that was sent down there, but I only know his side. And so if you have meetings and you want me to be there, and I'll do everything I can to be present. You know, a lot of things happen with this issue, you know, and I'll just say involving the schools, because people that should have been at that meeting wasn't at that meeting, and it's turned into a huge controversy. And I don't know if y'all are going to talk about that at all, so I won't go into it any further than that. But it could have been prevented. And it's still going on. I got another email yesterday, so where somebody sent down there requesting a response back from the county level, and it's just not the way to do business. You know, it just really isn't, because it's causing, because what the people in this town need to understand is they're not our friends. And I'll say that publicly, and I'll say it in our own meeting. I mean, I've seen it for the last 6 months. It's hard to get anywhere and get anything, and that's why I've said, even for anybody that's told me they were having a meeting, let me go with you. Let me be present, so when it gets, if it turns into a two-sided who said what, at least you've got somebody there to support you, or at least take your position and say, no, that's not what, because I'm not going to say that's what was said if it wasn't. But if you can't defend yourself, and that's what we've seen here in the last week, that it's put somebody in a bad position to try to defend herself, and it might have all been prevented, it could be a mistake, I don't know, but I know it's caused us all a lot of hours of headache, without saying much more on that. And I just feel like that we've got to figure out how we can work together. I'm here to represent you, and I'll do everything I can to do that, but I gotta know about it, and it's painful when I have to hear it from down there before I hear it from up here. Because I can't defend it. I can't say, well, that's exactly how it is, and that's why it should be that way.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, is that all you need from me? I hope, there's a couple of things that I do want to mention. I do it later, whenever it comes up that's been going on.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I want to tell you about Bill Thomas, and he belongs to the James Monroe Foundation. And probably, you probably know they've been trying to do something out there for quite some time. Well, I really didn't realize how, it was supposed to have been completed in April, and that was the house, grand opening and all that. That project has been a disaster.
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars has been wasted.
Yep.
And I didn't know that till I started looking at documents and got involved in it, and had some people, even a town resident, who actually does a fantastic job. Bucky Dorr of being the head person out there and trying to tell people the history and opening the visitor center and all that. So, but Bill Thomas, who's been involved in this from day one, came to our meeting and acknowledged that yes, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars been wasted. He now has Gordon Wilkins involved in it. Not the attorney, but the attorney's son, who I think he was talking about, even though he didn't say that. I think maybe he might be talking about Judge Wilkins' son, but I'm not positive. But anyway, it's Gordon Wilkins. And he's doing the construction now, took over that process. They're trying to make a lot of things that were done wrong right, because it's historical significance. So they're wide open on it. They've already put the heat pumps in there now. He informed us that, you know, this won't be the end. Even when that house is done, they've got other projects. And the reason I wanted to bring this up today was the fact that he mentioned that he at some point is going to come to the town and ask him to maybe look at giving the foundation the old dump out there, that piece of property that's by the Moose Lodge, so they can expand the James Monroe birthplace. So just something for you to know, just for information, and I'm sure at some point in time you're going to see that and hear about that. So, and you may have already heard that, but I just want to make you aware of it, that they're moving forward now. That affects all of us. And if you haven't been out there and done it, I went out there a couple months ago, and I'll be honest with you, it's the first time I've been there in quite a while. You know, now the county's getting it up to speed with maintenance and all that, and the grass is cut and it's been groomed and it looks beautiful, but it is a lot of beautiful history there. They've done an outstanding job. The walk of, you know, of the history and everything is just great. It should be open, or will be open very soon, to where people can visit and they'll, you know, do social distance and all that. But I did want to mention that because I know Ms. Dorr's done everything she can to make that just her thing.
Is she the docent?
She is. She's the head one.
Walks the snails in our neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, and I've been in close, even though it's not in my district, I've been in close contact with her, we're trying to help her
Yeah.
get things through to the county, because the county's upset with this project.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It's in Mr. Henson's, district, and he is really, they're kind of at the end of saying that, you know, we've done everything we can and we're not doing anything else until you do what you said you were gonna do. But there's been some reasons that all that stuff happened, so I will just tell you, that's something that's affects us as well, is the only reason I'm bringing it to your attention.
Mr. Chair, I had a meeting out there last year with, Margaret Ransom about trying to receive, grant money to connect a trail system from our town limits to Monroe Bay, birthplace, or James Monroe's birthplace. And, she was very much on board with this, and it was part of a regional transit, comprehensive plan. I don't know where that's gone. Ms. Dorr was very on board. There was a lot of momentum at the time. It would have been something that took years to, you know, finally come to fruition, but it was planting the seeds of that. And I just wanted to put that on your radar, that I know with COVID and the struggles that we're going through right now, I'm sure there's no future for that at this moment. But I'd hate to see the frustrations of what happened with the contractor, because we had similar problems at Torrey Smith Park with contractors not following through on what they should be doing and then having to hold them accountable. This happens in the construction industry all the time, unfortunately. And especially at a historical site, it's very important, and oversight is very important. You'll see as the school, you know from building our school and the school of the county now how important that will be. But I just wanted to keep it in your head just as a reminder that if I come in a couple years and this starts to take legs, that I hope you don't give up on that birth site, because I view it really as a tourist attraction, a benefit to our community, even though it's in District 4, and I would love to have better connections between District 4 and 5, so.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen, because
I know.
it's,
I understand.
I mean, it's been frustrating for the county, because this should have been done a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and there was deadlines set, and, you know, then you went out there and you saw they took all the brick off and they changed, I mean, I'm literally, I want to say 400,000 or something was wasted. It's a lot of money, a huge amount of money. And there's one donor that evidently is making a large contribution for all that, but it's just like, it's like any other job. If you're not there to supervise it, you know, and then things get done wrong, the only thing you can do is hire somebody different to correct it, and it costs you lots of money.
You know, 3 years, almost 3.5 years ago, this was the same conversation that we
Really?
had. That's a fact. And
Well, it's been going on a long time. I do know that.
Supervisor meeting.
Well, I do know that the supervisors are pretty much, and I think there has been a lot of correspondence between the county attorney as well as the foundation and whoever's involved in this, to let them know that we do have a position on this and that we want to see it done soon. And that's why I think Bill Thomas showed up to talk about that and what was going on. He seems excited now that he's got the right person in the right seat on the bus to make it happen. And we'll see. But I also wanted to tell you, at our meeting, that, you know, Dr. Perry from Westmoreland Schools brought up about this hazardous pay. I was in his presentation as well as the one that came from the town. And that Mr. Rosati said that he reached out to the auditor, and the auditor, and I can't tell you verbatim what he said, so if I'm a little bit off, just, it's in the minutes, I hope, but the fact that they had to have a written policy describing what hazardous pay actually really is before you should be dedicating any kind of funds to that. And the town may already have that. I don't know whether the school system has it or not. But that was his guidance to the board of supervisors, the fact that he is reaching out to the auditor whenever he sees things like this on a request, to make sure that the board who's going to approve these requests is in compliance, because we're the ones that's going to be held accountable, since we have to approve every single request. So I will just tell you, if you see something that you're not sure about, you might want to reach out to your auditor to say, is this something that's okay to do? I wanted to tell you too that we just approved a 18 to 20 megawatt solar farm. It's going to be right there at Placid Bay as you go into Placid Bay and Arboro, and most of us who've lived around here all of our life knows where Mickey Grove's farm was. It's going to be on that farm, which is 124 acres. And so that was approved at our meeting to rezone that. So that's what you're going to see there. It was a 2-year permit, so within the next 2 years, you're gonna see that probably. It's a Florida company that's gonna do that, and it's probably gonna be I think they're gonna utilize 55 acres of that farm too. And you're gonna see more and more of those. You know, but that's the next one that's on its way. And I wanna just mention, because I've gotten I've ran into some people, and I actually, just this morning talked to a lady that was a little frustrated. I don't know that she was, and I didn't go into detail with her because I suggested that she talk to y'all, but it happened to me, is the reason I'm bringing it to your attention. And it's happened to probably everybody in this room. Is about getting your town decals and having Colonial Beach on your registration. And she went to DMV the other day when she was told by town hall, you know, you gotta have that on there when I give you a decal. Which I know, I went through this a couple years ago. And DMV, in case you haven't went up Route 3, people are sitting in chairs. It's a 4, 5, or 6 hour wait. Now, I can't remember whether I went online and did that or not, but if you can do that, and maybe the town does this, but she wasn't offered anything at all to say, this is the process for doing that, online, get somebody to go online with you. So maybe if you don't have that, I'm just making a suggestion for something to think about. There might be go here and click on this, and then you can go here and click on this, and you can change where it says Westmoreland to Colonial Beach. I think that's what I did, but it's been so long ago when I did it. But I know just the lady I talked to, she was so frustrated because she said, I stood there and the guy in front of me said he'd been sitting there for 5 hours. And she said, I just can't take off for 5 hours to sit there and wait to get something on my restaurant. And I said, go online, I think this is how you can do it. I said, I hope I'm not telling you wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Because it's been a while back. So just a suggestion, if that's something that might help us moving forward. And, you know, I told her, I know you can't, you know, we've been given extra time and everything, but I just remember the day that I was in that office doing this, and I want to say it's what you changed it a couple years ago. There was some guy in there, man, that was like flipping out on the clerk. He was just irate, and it was kind of funny. I said, it can't be that big a deal. And he just can't be that big a deal, but he was so frustrated because he comes on weekends or whatever, and he had a car registered here. So anyway, I won't go any further on that, but
It got all of us, I think.
Mr. Mayor, it got me too, and I was just as frustrated as Mr. Trivett.
Yeah.
The problem is when you go to DMV and you register a vehicle,
They should ask.
it says city or county. It does not say town.
right.
So you automatically write County of Westmoreland.
Exactly.
That's the county within we live. And then you gotta go through that. And Mr. Trivett, you're exactly right. It's on DMV's website, which is not easy to navigate. I can only imagine the frustration, especially of our seniors. And I totally agree that maybe we should put together a one-pager or something. Or maybe even, at one time we had in finance, we had a computer there. I don't know if it's still there. But maybe help them. I mean, I think we need to go above and beyond instead of just sending people out. And that's kind of what happened to me. Luckily, they did tell me that I could do it online, and that's what I did, and came back and got my decal. But I feel your frustration, and I think it happened to a lot of us. But that's the problem. It says city or county, it doesn't say town. So everybody puts County of Westmoreland, and then you come get your sticker, and you gotta change it. So
So I hope you don't mind me sharing it publicly.
That's fine.
No.
Because I would have normally called Quinn and said, hey, can you do this?
No,
Or
that's right.
are you getting these complaints? But it just, you know, and I normally don't, and believe it or not, I took a piece of, it was, because I was at a business, and I took one of the things that you pull out, you know, when you're getting gas, and I wrote it on there, and then I forgot it. I left it at home. I said, because I know I'll forget before I get here to remind somebody to look into this.
We don't let you forget. Have you seen the big ugly sign on our door when you come to the town hall? It says-
I haven't noticed it because I don't have that problem
It
anymore.
says Town of Colonial Beach or whatever.
Yeah.
Everything says town.
But anyway, I do want to say that gosh, the beach is beautiful. We know it was packed last week. You know, Rob and whoever else that's done, I mean, your staff has just done a great job. Danny Boy's gone. That's what I always call him. My whole life was Danny Boy. And I've never heard him called Daniel. But if he was here right now, I would tell him that, because that's what I've always known him by, was Danny Boy. And but great personality, has done, you know, great job for the town. And I know you're going to bring up somebody else soon that has done the same thing. It's been so enjoyable working with Kathy and always ready to help and ask for anything. Always kept me aware of meetings and agendas and everything, and I really thank you for that. And, you know, I know it gets frustrating when you're in those positions at town hall, because people, when you gotta deal with the public,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you know, you gotta have that right mindset and that right attitude, or you ain't gonna make it. You know, because it can get frustrating really quick. But I do want to say, you know, just thank you for all you've done as a council mayor. I think it's been well noticed. People comment about it all the time, compliment about it. I know there's always some negativity, no doubt. Not nobody's perfect. But I'll just tell you, even from my standpoint of seeing what's been going on in the town, I've been impressed that you know, people have been on top of things. And believe it or not, I got like 6 calls yesterday about water being off. It was the craziest thing. I said, why do people think I know everything? But I thought I know why they call me, because the fire department, you know, thinking, well, you must know if there's water problems, you know, the fire department's got to know. So I know why they were doing that, but, you know, but I know they got right on that, and it wasn't very long before, you know, that was repaired as well without any break. But it just goes to show the dedication and what's going on, and the professionalism and what you've been able to accomplish in the last few years. So I just want to thank you for that. Does anybody else have any questions of me? I haven't been able to stand up here for, these people are going to drum me right out of here.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate
We
it.
good? Okay.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Do we need a 2 minute?
I could use a break, but I look here.
Okay, we're gonna take a 2-minute recess, 2 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being patient. Giving us a little break. Move on to item 9, which is unfinished business. And start with resolution 18-20, adoption and appropriation of fiscal year 2021 budget and adoption and appropriation of fiscal year 2021 budget for the Colonial Beach School Board. We had a public hearing on June 5th, which was attended by some folks. So this is up for a vote at this point. Is there a motion to approve resolution 18-20?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Can I do it right now?
Yeah.
Okay. After looking at the school's budget, and I realize there are a lot of monies that will come in different entities that are going to be spent in other ways. I would like to add an additional $100,000 to the 1.745765. I'd like to amend the budget to do that.
Okay.
Okay?
To the what? 1 point,
For fiscal year, the amount of money, 1.745765. I would like to add an additional 100,000.
Is there a motion to approve an amendment to the current resolution 18-20, the proposed fiscal year budget 2021? Okay, motion failed. Now, the motion's back on the table. Is there a motion to approve resolution 18-20?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Ms. Roberson?
No.
Ms. Shea?
Before I say my vote, I think it is important to explain the budget and, because this is a big cut to the school, but I think our public deserves a very clear understanding of how this happened. So, in and this is because of my personal vote to this, because this is a hard thing for me to do. I'm a drifter. I'm a Colonial Beach drifter. Okay, it's in my veins. All right. But I'm also a very fiscally responsible person. If you know me personally, you will know that I practice that in my life. So, in 2015 and 2016, there was a big occurrence that happened here in town where our town manager was fired and our CFO was fired. And at that point in time, our mayor took over as town manager, and a lot of things got really delved into. Got really started to get really looked at. I was not on council at that time, but we have been going through a long process from that point in time to where we are today. And that's important for our community to understand, because these things do take time. And what happened from that scrutiny was we found out we were overspending what our revenue projections were, and that we were projecting revenue that was not coming in. So that's how we were balancing a budget, was we were over projecting revenue. Okay? So the town, and really run by the mayor, put a stop to that and said, that's it. We are going to project revenue based on actuals. We are going to show what we are actually bringing in, and it is going to show trends, and we are going to base our spending on those trends. This is taking time. This has taken a lot of work by Lisa, by Gladys, by Quinn. All of our departments received cuts. When Quinn came on board, a hiring freeze happened in every department. They were gutted, they were stripped, They were skeleton. We stayed with a flatline budget as I came on the council. Our department suffered because of that. The school funding stayed the same. We continued to allocate the exact same amount of funds over those years. Because we support our school, and it's the school board's responsibility also to allocate their own funds and go through their own process. And honestly, in my first time as being a council member, our focus is on the town departments first, and the school has their own responsibility to spend their money. And I don't really want to get involved in the school's individual allocation of their budget. They can do that. They know better than me about how to do that. They're in the school system to do that. So, as we made really deep cuts to our departments, stopped hiring, didn't give raises to people that had been here. Poor Kathy, who's retiring, and I love you, she skipped on her raises. We really did a lot of financial management. Over that time period, I then started to have discussions with the school and find out where some of the spending was coming from, because our community was asking that of us. Why is the school spending so much money on such a small school? And so as I went through the financials from the school system, I found out they were doing similar things to us, and it's just a management process. They were budgeting on their previous budget years, which is what we were doing. We were also at fault for this. And I say we, even though I wasn't on council, because I'm part of this community, and I as a citizen should hold our elected officials in our town responsible just as well if I'm sitting on that side as if I'm sitting on this side. So, in that time frame that we made all these cuts, we're still growing. We have growing needs, and things are going really well. And we're finally spending within our means. Now, at this time frame that we were given same level monies to the school, another really big thing was happening. We were building an elementary school, and the school budget was using a very large line item to pay for trailers to house our kids in within their school's budget. And as the new elementary school actually came to fruition and was then occupied, the school board was no longer responsible for paying for those trailers because they gave them back. We didn't need the trailers anymore. Well, the school facility is a capital asset. Can everybody hear me? I'm gonna make sure. Okay. So the school facility is a capital asset. Schools cannot hold debt over year to year. What they get, they have to spend. This is a learning process for me too. So we took on the debt of the elementary school within the town debt schedule. So the elementary school gets paid for within our town budget now. Versus before in the trailers, that was coming out of the school board's budget. So we continued to fund them at the same level, and they no longer had that expense. So actually, they had an extra amount of monies, right? Because they didn't have that expenditure. And over the past 3 years, there has been an excess fund at the end of the school's year of between $300,000 and $375,000. I have been an advocate for the school keeping that money. That's their money, we gave it to them. It's their responsibility to spend it. As a town council member, I am not a school board member, and I very much respect the role of our school board. And that's their job to do that. But when COVID hit, and we decided we needed to project the reality of how this situation is going to affect our community, is going to affect our revenue, we made some major adjustments in revenue projections. And where the town had been this steady incline, here we are with COVID losing parking money, losing sales tax money, losing an enormous amount. And you'll see, if you look in our budget, if you really look at the notes, you'll see we slash things by 50%, 25% to zero in some of those line items. And that's really hard to see, because I hope it doesn't end up like that. I hope that when we see our beaches full, that we'll see more revenue than what we're projecting. I hope we're being conservative, because we can always make allocations later once we know we have the money. And so I fully expect to see allocations made in the future to change this, because I think we're being responsible and conservative. Now, when we had to make these cuts, our departments have already made major cuts. Our departments have already been flatlined. We just last year, for the first time, gave a very minimal raise to our staff. So that is where the justification in some of this school cut is coming from, is that there has been an excess of funds happening within their budget already. And that then the cuts beyond that are the same cuts that we are making within our own town departments. So when you take the $350,000 that has been an overage for the last 3 years trending, and you say, okay, well, that's already been money that they have not been operating on, then it puts a perspective on the school cut that is a little bit different than just seeing it as one number and another number. Because if you just look at it like that, it really exacerbates what has actually been a very long process to get to this. And as a drifter, I want to allocate more money to the school. I want to, as we see revenues come in, as we know things are changing for the better, as the projections give us valid data to make those judgments on, I fully am going to support an amendment to the budget to give portions of money, more money to the school. I mean, that needs to happen. I know that they're going to go through a stressful amount of time. I also expect there will be money yet again this year that has not been spent in their budget. We set up a capital improvement plan so that the school can keep their money. This is part of us protecting our school system. Our school system is the biggest asset we have. And it's because I believe in the youth of this town. I came from it. So I say that before I vote because there were not very many people at our budget meeting. I think there were two people at our budget meeting. So I have a little bit bigger space to understand and explain what's happening and how we are managing it and trying to take responsibility for it from all levels. And that this is not just a one-year cut, that this has been a process from year to year. And I have met with Shelley and Mr. Turner and Pat and Frank and Vicki, and there's been lots of communication, and we support our school system, and we are going to work through this together. And we know that they're going to go through some trials because they have an ADM number that I worry about. I hope our ADM reaches that level. I don't know what schools are going to look like in the fall. That makes me nervous. I know they're going to receive reduced sales tax monies because we all know business tax money is not coming in like we expected it to before COVID hit. We know that. I mean, that's obvious. So, I just think it was important to explain the whole aspect of it. Another point I want to make is that in 2018 to 2019, the school year, 2018-2019, not this current year because we don't have the final numbers for the current year yet because they closed out June 30th. But for that year, the school operated entire operations, all staff, everything, at $7.4 million. Their current school budget, including the local funding that we're putting up here right now, even at the reduced rate, is 7.8. So, not last year, but just the year before, they operated without making any cuts to staff at 7.4 million. Their school budget right now is 7.8. So I hope that in the school board's own way and in our school's own way, that they can continue to operate. I have high hopes for that. Because if they were operating at 7.4 just 2 years ago, hopefully at 7.8, they will still be able to provide education to our kids. And I hope we can continue to support the school, and but also be fiscally responsible about it. So my vote for the budget is aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shea. And the chair also votes aye. Motion passes. Okay. On that note, I have the thank you everyone who participated in this budget process and taking a step back. I want to thank Mr. Trivett, because 3 years ago, we were toe-to-toe trying to get an amenable working relationship with the two budgets, and we accomplished that. And I thought the last two budget cycles went absolutely phenomenal. And I think that after we tweak this and have more discussions in the future, the next one will too. So we had a $900,000 deficit we carried for multiple years, almost a dozen years. We had a lot of difficult accounting discrepancies, I guess is the best way to say it. We were able to get a $480,000 revenue windfall this year, but then COVID hit us. So we had $1.5 million turnaround with Quinn cutting everything to the bone, and the town progressing and more tourism and things, but we lost that to COVID. So the point I'm trying to make is that the sky's the limit right now, it looks like. And we will eventually get to that North Star that you've heard me mention before. And we'll get through this pandemic and we'll take on the next battle, whatever it is. But as that happens, the town will continue to grow and more services will be required. Some of the folks that are moving here want more better services, they want more services, and you know, we're going to provide it for them, and you guys will. I'm done, obviously, but you guys will. And but I want to say thank you to the council for making these very difficult decisions. I also want to thank you to Quinn and Lisa and Gladys when you see her, and all the department heads, Chief and Rob, and everybody else that was involved in the budget process. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just real quickly, because you didn't call for discussion, we just went straight for a vote.
Yeah.
But I do want to echo what you and Robin both have said. I voted for the budget because we're in unseen times, and we don't know where we're going to be in the fall. We don't know where we're going to be anywhere at this point in this budget. But I think I can speak for every member of council here. I know personally I'm fully prepared for the school superintendent to come and ask us for additional money. And I think if the money's there, we're going to support the school system. I don't have any children in the school. I doubt that, I don't want to say never, but I probably never will have children in the school here. But it is one of our biggest assets. It's what brings young family people to our town. And we have to support it. We know we have to support it. It's not going anywhere. And Sean, I think he's already left, but you know, he came up and spoke with us at the budget meeting. And I think we're all fully prepared to, if there's a need, we're not going to let a student in this town go without. And that's coming from me, and I think everybody will echo that.
Thank you, Dallas. Okay, next on the agenda is new business, and resolution 19-20 is the acceptance of retirement of the town clerk,
They're not gonna vote for this.
Kathy Flanagan.
Nay.
So there's a motion to accept retirement of our town clerk, Kathy Flanagan. Resolution 19-20. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Mr. Alger?
Am I 4 years here, Kathy, I think you've always helped me out, learning the process of what I needed to do to be a good council member, and hopefully the people on the crowd and the people in this town think that, you know, same way that I do, that you've done a great job while you've been working here with us. So thank you.
Mr. Ryan?
Kathy, I'd like to thank you as well. 2 years, about 2 years working with you. Every time I come in there, it puts a smile on my face, and usually I got some crazy question that you give me some answer to that's real easy, and you just spit it out, and I appreciate all you've done for all the council and myself and helping me grow through your knowledge. Thank you.
Mr. Lehman?
Mr. Mayor, as everybody probably in the audience knows, I worked for the town before I came and sat in this seat, and working with Kathy has been awesome. I was joking with her on her Facebook page yesterday. I told her that she didn't last a whole 4 years with me, because she's retiring before this next election. I'm going to vote against this resolution, because if I don't, I'm thinking probably everybody else will let it pass. But Kathy is always the one that, when I run in the door last minute coming from Arlington and I've forgotten my pen, she's had one for me. Kathy, I did bring mine today. Did have an extra one in the Jeep. So, Kathy, it's been a pleasure working with you. We've been through a lot of trying times with the previous council and some with the current council, but you've always been there to direct us. You've always been there to lead us in the right direction, to make sure we don't get in trouble with our financial forms that we have to do every year that everybody always forgets to go fill out. We're looking forward to working with Heather. We hope you guys are going to stick around in town. Hope to see you on the boardwalk and buy you an ice cream sometime.
Okay.
Thank you for doing what you've done.
Thank you.
Vicki?
I've known Kathy, oh my gosh, well over 10 years, and it is and has been truly a pleasure to work with her so closely. Going on the back to what everyone else has said, there's not a thing she doesn't do for us whenever we call, whenever we stop in, when it's like 5 minutes before closing and Kathy, I'm almost there, can you keep the door open for me? Sure, I'll be here, I'll be here, I'll be here. So we are going to miss you terribly and enjoy.
Thank you.
Robin?
Kathy and I were commemorating yesterday at the retirement party that we both entered town government under Mayor Rummage, which was an interesting time in our lives here. And I just want to say that you have taken me under your wing. You have taken other staff members under your wing. Certainly Heather, who I just am so excited to work with. And I just can't thank you enough for kind of being that role model to everyone you work with. And you're an institutional knowledge that I will still call on. I know I gave you my cell phone number, but you can save it because we're gonna have questions come up that Heather and I are both gonna look at each other and be like, we better call Kathy. And I just thank you for the effort that you put forth in this community. And I remember we were messing with, in the planning commission, I said, we are gonna videotape the planning commission meetings and put them on YouTube. And she just thought I was crazy. Well, now look at us, right? We're all virtually Zooming things. It's incredible. So we've come a long way, and I just thank you for your service, because it's not easy to work in town government. So thank you.
So, we've been together 6 years, and it's been some extremely challenging times. As you know, at one point in time, the council elected to terminate the positions of our town manager and CFO, and so I fell into the role of town manager. And when you lose those people, you lose a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge. If you can imagine, I literally was in an office. I had never sat in the chair before, and I had to go through file cabinets to find anything, to know where to start. And so the first gangster-like thing I did was remove the ballards down here. Get Taylor Street going one way, and man, oh man, oh man. They said, you can't do it, you can't do it. And I went to Kathy and she said, you probably can't do it. And I said, well, let's do it and see what happens. So we did it. And we got a big laugh out of that, and it faded. And then I said, Kathy, I said, this room that we're doing these meetings in, if you remember, we had 4 tables here with a cloth over, and that was it. I said, it's not safe. I said, in today's world, somebody could run right up here and, well, Kathy got this put together. Kathy, people can't see. Kathy got the TVs put together. Kathy got the Wi-Fi. Kathy got the sound system. Kathy has done all of this and all the rest of the stuff that the clerk has to do, which is baby and nurture each and every council member and the mayor on a regular basis. Put fights out between the council members and the mayor and citizens. Cover for you.
FOIA request.
FOIA request. Oh my gosh. Telephone book size FOIA request. Take phone calls, make phone calls for you, write things for you. It's just, I personally could have never even come close to staying this long and having this experience if it wasn't for Kathy. And that's a fact. And I personally am gonna really miss you. So, with that, yeah, sorry, I'm a crier, by the way. So, we're going to continue with the vote. Mr. I.
Aye.
Mr. Lehman.
Aye.
Ms. Roberson.
Aye.
Ms. Schick.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
And Frank.
And
I vote aye
Frank.
as well.
Yeah. But we're going to do it on one condition, that you come up here and get this from us. This is from everybody that loves you. It's a really nice crystal, and it says, recognizing Kathy Flanagan on your retirement after 9 years with the town of Colonial Beach. You've been an outstanding team member and extraordinary friend. Best wishes on your upcoming adventures. And the team member and friendship thing is so important. And it's not 9 years, it's really 90 years, is what it felt like, I'm sure. So, well, we miss you, we love you. Please come visit us. I'm gonna visit you, as you know. I'm gonna never stop calling you until I'm done sitting in this chair. And I also wanna say thank you so much, equally, for giving us Heather. Kathy was the big interviewer. She helped us pick her replacement, and I don't think we could be more proud of your choice. And Heather, welcome to the club.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything you're doing. And honestly, from the bottom of my heart, and this council's heart, and this community's heart, thank you so much. I mean that. You should have told Rick to come.
I know.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2020, appointment of Heather Oliver as Colonial Beach Town Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion.
For a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Frank?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Dallas?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Chair votes an outstanding aye. Congratulations. Be prepared. Be prepared. Okay. Resolution 21-20, approval to resume previously established schedule of work session meetings. I think you had a chance. Frank, you usually are the one to make sure that we have this right. Do we have it right?
Looks good.
Okay. Very good. With that, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Frank?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Dallas?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Resolution 22-20, approval to resume previously established schedule of regular town meetings. Again, Frank, did you look that over good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion.
Is there a second? Second. Frank?
Aye.
Pat? Aye. Dallas?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Thank you. Chair votes aye. Okay, we're gonna open a public hearing. Public hearing ordinance, number 704, the sign ordinance, proposed changes to the zoning ordinance in tab F. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read it because it's pretty lengthy. Yeah, okay, let's see, before we discuss it. Is there anybody signed up to speak on the sign ordinance? Okay, hang on, I think, check this paper. There should be a piece of paper back there. Check that first, Steve, and then I'll have you up. Yeah, Bob.
Mayor, if I may interject real quick, the staff report does give, I think, a good broad
Consensus.
summary of.
Yeah,
You want to do the staff report before the public?
yes, we can do that.
comment?
Yes, we can do that. You wanna do it? You ready to do it?
Sure.
We went through this at the work session several months ago, but knocking off the dust. And if you recall, this was, most of this work had been done more than a couple of years ago by the Planning Commission, and it was sent back. And the biggest thing that we looked at was the cap on wall signage. There was a request from the riverboat to be able to add some signage, and so that's, to me, one of the bigger changes is to eliminate the cap, so it still remains proportional to the size of the property, but it doesn't keep the cap in place. There were also some changes to murals and things of that nature. Non-illuminated yard signs and so forth. There was one change after the March 4th work session for yard signs that would be changed to a limit of 2 yard signs per property, a total size of 12 square feet. So that was the only change for council after the Planning Commission public hearing. So I want to point that out. Since the work session in March, and I want to acknowledge Mr. Kennedy for pointing out the fact that this ordinance does not address political campaign signs. Under the, I guess, still current or old ordinance, political campaign signs are exempt, except that there are portions of temporary sign ordinances that apply. But generally, it's been interpreted that those are exempt from our regulations. In the proposed ordinance, there is no mention of political campaign signs. So there's that really leaves it subject to interpretation of whether or not political campaign signs are covered at all, or if they're covered as temporary signs. So I've had discussions with the attorney, had discussions with the vice mayor, because she was very involved in putting together the draft sign ordinance a few years ago. And so I'm recommending that something be done to address to give us some guidance in administering. My recommendation would be that they be exempt, namely because that's state law leans towards exemption of these signs, except that you can restrict, like you would other temporary signs. There's some federal campaign law that comes into play, and there's just a practical aspect of trying to enforce and manage these signs. Under a temporary sign, if you were included as such, we would have to do a sign permit for each one. There's time limits, so you're trying to manage when they go up, the number of signs, all this sort of thing. It just becomes, particularly in a campaign season, becomes very, very challenging. So I would recommend that there be an amendment that political signs be exempt, and there's a section in the ordinance here that lists the different signs that are exempt. So I would recommend adding to 12.4I that political campaign signs be exempt. There have been, in our discussions with the Vice Mayor, I know, and you may want to speak to this, some concerns about adding a time provision. I think that that could serve a purpose of limiting signs being placed too early. It does still raise some challenges in terms of being able to manage the process, but it's definitely a very valid concern to have. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Vice Mayor, or not.
Sure, Jack. I can add it now. So, Richard called me, I don't know, 2 days ago, and wanted clarification on what the intent of the changes were for the sign ordinance, because it's been revised 2012, 2014, 2018. And in the end, I went back through all my planning commission notes, which I have a ton of on this. In fact, I have like 12 copies of the ordinance with all kinds of staff notes on them. And I pulled up I took screenshots of it, so I'm going to use that. What the text said from the staff perspective at that time, which was under Brendan McHugh and then Kelly De Jesus. And currently, I want to kind of provide an alternative interpretation to what Richard said, is our current ordinance very clearly states that campaign signs are temporary signs and will be administered under the rules of temporary signs. And then under temporary signs, very clearly states that they cannot be up for more than 30 days. Clear, very clear. I do not see any kind of other interpretation of that. In fact, it states right at the top of that paragraph, this is in the old ordinance. This is in the current, well, I shouldn't say old, it's current. This is what our current rules are. And part of the problem with what our current ordinance was, and what the intent was that there were parts of the ordinance that were not enforceable. And so, why are we having an ordinance we can't enforce it, and we have all these signs all over the place, and it's a disaster? And if Steve was here, I'll tell you, he would have a field day, because he would be talking about signs in the right of way and all kinds of sign things. And this is a hard one because our public really was demanding that we clean up the signs. There are signs everywhere, especially yard signs, everywhere. They're in the right of way, they get messed up, they're, ugly. We have a tourist-based community. The beautification and the aesthetic of our community is very important to our industry here. So that's where, from the public side, the input that we were getting. So they said and this is from that language, that a yard sign should be a small advertising sign that can be placed on a street facing lawn or elsewhere on the property to express the support of an election candidate, a political position, by the property owner, sometimes used to promote a business or temporary activity such as yard sales, real estate promotions, financing, construction contractors, and lawn care. Typically, these signs are made of corrugated plastic with metal or wooden stakes. And I think that was in the discussion because we wanted to be real clear about things and kind of clear this up. So I agree there needs to be clarification. I have an amendment to the sign ordinance that is in front of us today in order to provide clarification of that. And I don't know if you want to have a public hearing first and then I'll propose the amendment. So we'll do it that way and kind of try to clear this up.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue with the public hearing as such, and we have Robert Christensen.
Okay, well, thank you. I was just going to briefly thank our planning director for his help in this as a member of the planning commission. We found the previous sign language to be ambiguous and difficult to understand. At least I did. I think that was shared by some other members of the committee. And with the very few suggestions from Mr. Douglas, he has really, a few minor wordsmithing, he has really made it easier to understand. I realize that the impetus for changing the sign language has pretty much come from commercial situations, but as an average citizen, seeing all the signs around and wondering what is the difference between a temporary sign and a yard sign. And his experience has been very useful in helping me understand that, and I think the rest of the planning commission as well. And I really appreciate his knowledge and assistance in this. So I think some progress has been made, but there may still be some confusion, especially in the area of political science. And remember also that there are nonprofits that have events and things like that that we want to hopefully be able to include in the area of yard signs. And the COVID situation has produced a real need for temporary signs. And I'm willing to bet that there weren't a whole lot of people that came to request permission and to get a permit for those signs, but I know that the way it's been handled is very wise, and to have this regulation so that if somebody abuses that condition, it can be enforced. So again, thank you very much to our planning commissioner, planning director, Mr. Douglas, for his great help in improving the situation. I look forward to the day when every sign here says, "Welcome to Colonial Beach," rather than "Don't park here, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this." You got too many of those signs, and none of those signs that say, "Welcome to the greatest town in the state of Virginia."
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take that. Okay, Mr. Kennedy, do you want to speak?
Mr. Douglas has already addressed my issue, so.
Okay, very good. So I'm going to close the public hearing portion of it. And I'd like to personally thank Mr. Douglas for doing an exceptional job with the planning portion of it and working with the planning commission on that as well. So
I just apologize we didn't address this political sign issue. I mean, that just never came up in
it's okay.
discussion.
I think we can do it. Ms. Schick, did you want to make an amendment to this?
Sure. First I want to ask, you want to open it for discussion real quick? And then
Yeah,
I'll
we
make an
can.
amendment?
Okay, so let's start with, is there a motion to approve ordinance number 704, the sign ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's open for discussion then.
Okay, does this allow for the Riverboat's new sign? Did you guys add square footage for, okay.
Yeah, by eliminating the cafe.
Perfect, okay, just wanted to make sure of that. So, if you go page by page on the ordinance, I'd like to propose to amend, I'm sorry, my thing wasn't on, I apologize. Okay, I'd like to propose to amend the sign ordinance with the following suggestions. On page 3, 12-4, under 12-4D, there's a grammatical error. It says in the very end of 12-4D, do no promote. It says we do not. Under 12-7, next page, temporary signs. A, it says in addition to provisions set forth in 12-4 and 12-7, that should say 12-6, not 7. Don't refer to your own section. And that's where the correlation between yard signs now comes into the temporary sign section. So that's why that particular amendment is important. Under 5, so I'm still on 12-7, number 5, permitted temporary signs or banners can be erected for a period of no more. I'd like to change that to 60 days instead of 30. And I would like to strike the point of, and no establishment may erect 6 temporary signs or banners in a calendar year. I would like to strike that entire portion, second portion of that sentence. And I think Mr. Christensen made a good point that COVID has really changed the need for these types of temporary signs, and so I do not want to regulate the amount of them in a calendar year. Also, that would be a huge headache for our planning department. So let's relieve some pressure off them on that. Yeah, so that's striking the end of that sentence, and no establishment may erect, okay? And then, if you keep flipping, and there's these beautiful diagrams, which are very helpful, to show what the signs look like. If you get to the part that says canopy awning sign, it's a big picture, a canopy awning sign on it. I don't know what page that is. Number 4, murals. Under murals, C, it says murals that are primarily non-commercial in nature and are not subject to any size restrictions relative to the surface on which they are painted or adhered. I would like to add, and not included in computation of permitted signage. This was in the old text from the sign ordinance in 2018. I want to make sure that that gets back in here. I don't want murals to count as somebody's promotional advertising sign computation. They're separate. They're non-commercial in nature. If they're non-commercial in nature. Okay. Did you get that, Richard?
Not included in computation of
permitted signage. Sign area, permitted sign area. Yeah. And this one might create some discussion. In hanging blade signs, you see the post with the little hanging blade sign. I'd like to allow them in R1 and R2 with a home occupancy permit. See, R1 and R2 is not on this list of zoning for this particular type of sign. We need to be more business friendly. Our home occupations are what turn into brick and mortar, and that's part of allowing this type of sign at a home occupation. And
Could I ask a question?
yep.
And if the home occupation that's permitted has conditions on it, and it would exclude signs, that would control.
Yeah, the conditional use permit would override this. Yeah,
Make sure
absolutely.
everybody
Any
understands.
condition in a conditional use permit overrides.
I know that, but I'll make sure everybody else knows.
Oh, sure. Yes. Yes, if you have conditions on your use permit, you have to follow those specific conditions.
And I'll add, I mean, it's on the agenda for later for the conditional use permit. That's one of the proposed conditions that there be no signage.
Yeah.
So that would override what the ordinance
Exactly.
here.
But for general purposes,
Unless there's a condition.
like pretty pets at 2nd Street. We all take our dogs to pretty pets, come on. So that would be an example. But, I just want to note for the public, this is not a change. I do not want to change this, but I want to note that under 12-12, changeable copy signs, the digital changeable copy signs that are allowed, these are the scroll digital signs. Shoe was out of battle once upon a time, no more. There is no longer a conditional use permit required for this. There used to be, there won't be anymore. So I don't want to change that, I just wanted to note it. And in the last page, under definitions, so it says the very last little section, right before the end here, under the definitions, I want to change yard sign to say sign, comma, yard or lawn, because in our definitions page, you'll look for S to find the definition of these things. So I want to make sure that it goes in signs. And then I want to add where it says real estate, contractor signs, comma, and campaign signs, period. So it will say temporary signs that are typically placed in front yards of a residence, examples of yard signs included but are not limited to real estate contractor signs and campaign signs, period.
Political campaign sign? That's what the code of Virginia is.
Okay, political campaign signs so that it matches exactly the code. And that's the way the code reads, is that they can be regulated by timbers. So it will be exact same language as the code. Okay, that's my proposed amendment.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
Is there a motion to approve ordinance 704 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Mr. Roberson?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Alright. Next, another public hearing. Public hearing on ordinance 705, landscaping articles, proposed changes to zoning ordinance 10G. And we'll open the public hearing. Okay. Everybody signed up? Once, go once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. Ordinance number 705, landscaping articles, proposed changes to zoning ordinance tab G. Does planning have, does the planning administrator have anything you want to say on this at all, or?
I just want to highlight the main points are in the staff report, but we were asked to look at whether or not we could accommodate plant hurdles or other trees in plantings. We've done that with the street plantings for new construction. We did recommend that for tree replacement of the woodlot management permits, so those be restricted to the native species as laid out in the DCR pamphlet that they provide. We did strike all the specific trees from the ordinance, so we just refer to the DCR guide in the event that that's modified. It makes it a lot easier to work with. We added pretty significant landscaping parking requirements to the parking section. I do want to mention that we did not look at anything else in terms of number of parking spaces or any other parking guidelines. If that's something that you want the planning commission to take a look at, you would need to direct us for that. This is just for the landscaping portion. And then the other thing that you asked us to look at was the planning ratio, and we felt that maintaining the 2-to-1 and then 3-to-1 in the resource protection areas was something that we should maintain. So those are the main changes. Do also want to add, and it has come into play, that we've kind of used this kind of already in our interpretation review of building plans, the clarification on the construction footprint and ensuring that a lot is not cleared entirely, that they maintain trees where they can, and I can name a handful of projects where we were able to keep the trees, particularly on the street or on the perimeter of the property, rather than just clear cutting a lot. So that's basically that in a summary.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's open for discussion. I have a couple of things I'd like to say something on here. So, anybody down here got anything? Discussion?
I have one question.
Yeah.
On the second page,
Sorry, on the second page, under 13, where it says design flexibility, additionally, the requirements of this section may be lowered by the director. Do you feel comfortable with that, or do you think that should have to go to the planning commission?
No, I'm fine with that. I mean, there's a lot of discretion. I mean, like in the mix of plantings, there's discretion in there, like on replantings. I mean, I've got the discretion to go to a smaller variety or using shrubs. I mean, it's good to have that administrative discretion because folks want to be able to, they want an answer so they can move forward with things and not having to wait on a scheduled meeting.
And he can always go to the planning commission for it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with that language. That's the only question I have.
So, I have a question. about the parking lot section. Okay? And I know we've had the discussions about this, but I was wondering, I went to Food Line, and I was wondering what would Food Line look like, that parking area for that shopping center with a big swell in it and plantings. What would it look like? And can we really expect someone who has a small parking lot, very small parking lot, to give up 5% of their parking? You know, they're required to have a certain amount of parking. For instance, if you took Denson's, he's required to have a certain amount of parking per amount of tables he has. But if he has to give up a portion of it for landscaping, how do we achieve that? That's the first two parts. And then the bigger part right now, because we're in this COVID thing, I could see where some of these could change. Some of what we're used to could change. Drive-throughs could be more prominent now. Things like that. So I almost feel like this is too blanket, and it would maybe could require more input from on a case-by-case basis as well. Another good example is down here on Colonial Avenue, where they just bulked the old motel, he boarded it up, he's fixing it all up, and that kind of stuff. What will they have to do for parking there? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I know in that particular case, they are planning to plant.
Right, they planted some trees, but I know that one time we talked about Wilder Lot and having to put a swell right across it. Parking is such a premium as it is, and I know we have to meet, especially in RPA, we have to meet guidelines and all that. And I don't guess this is a grandfather clause in any way, right? So like, we're not gonna go to the Food Line and tell them that they have to put a.
No.
Okay, so, but in the future with our growth, I guess more than anything, I was trying to visualize. I went there this morning just to kind of picture in my head, how would this have been done? What would we have done? I tried to look at it in terms of where I would have seen this other places. I'm just trying to.
Mayor, I would suggest in the future, if there was another shopping center like Food Line, that you may look at reducing the number of parking spaces, and then that would free up area. I mean, that's a national trend. We just had a session on that at the American Planning Association virtual conference, but that's a trend to have significantly less parking, if in some cases done at all, for a lot of different uses.
I can see that in an urban setting, in an urban, town square type setting thing. I totally would support that 1,000%. I mean, having grown up in Alexandria, I know you walk to the grocery store, that was pretty normal. But I just am wondering if we're putting too much of a burden.
Even in the case of the Beachgate Shopping Center, I mean, there's a lot more parking spaces, and that traditionally has been, you basically plan for, you plan for the worst, your busiest day of the year, and then most of the time it sits empty and it's just asphalt. So I think, and I did not put these recommendations forward. These had already been developed by the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
We just put them in the right spot, and they had a chance to review them again. But I think with less spots, less spaces, less parking, you could accommodate this so you don't have that sea of asphalt, and you do add a lot of beautification.
Yeah.
So there's an environmental aspect for the swales and so forth, but there's also a very aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, we're behind the times on this. I just want to be really clear about that. Our parking lots in town are so outdated. That is just not it's just not the way the world works anymore. The Food Line parking lot is a prime example of how things were done in the 90s, and now we're all dealing with stormwater management problems because of it. But if you look at a new Walmart, maybe the one in Dahlgren is a good example. There are trees down every so many rows that are part of a stormwater management plan. Now, in fixing these plans, they did them in mounds. Well, that didn't really help the stormwater issue. So now we're going to do them in swales. So actually, we're sort of, you know, I think we just need to get with the times here, and I'm fully would support amending also the number of spaces recommended, especially in line with the Association, Planners Association. I mean, that should be the next step to this. I support this document the way it is, and I think the plantings, 5% to me is minimum. It's 250 square feet in an entire 5,000 square foot lot, which is our average size of a lot in Point Beach. So 250 square feet is the size of a very small office. So, I don't feel like this is overreaching in that thing. I think we need to get with the times and the environmental issues that we're facing today. But I do think amending the number of spaces required, I'm all for that. So maybe that's the next discussion.
Is this for, I just have a question, is this for new builds only?
Yeah.
Or is this for, like, Mr. Redmond, who bought the old, I mean, would he be required to put that in because he's?
If he changes the use, he would be required to come to code.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, when you do complete new construction, redevelopment, they call it, you have to come in compliance.
I would just, and as I read through this document, I could see the painted picture, and it would be an aesthetic thing, and I get the logic behind it. As council moves forward to make a decision, one thing I'd like to keep in mind is we have a great problem probably coming up. We have the ability to have some pretty significant developments coming. And when I see this, and I know the end state what we're trying to achieve, and I think we all kind of agree to that. I would like to hope that we can keep an open mind and tailor things through conditional use permits, and just as we move forward with any future developments of magnitude, that we say, hey, you know what, maybe this square block doesn't fit in this round hole. And I think if council is amiable to that kind of mindset, I think we have a way ahead.
With the urban part of this resort commercial, which is right down here, already has variances for parking. So that particular zone is not, has allocations to not, you don't have to provide a giant parking lot at your business, because that would take away from the character of that zone. So each zone has its own requirements. So I think certainly there's a different mindset for this area than there is for other parts of town.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve? Yeah. I will take the vote then.
Aye.
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Vicky?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. Got it. Next. Public hearing number 706, code enforcement, proposed changes to tall grass vegetation, notification and fees, sorry. My glasses are fogging up. If I could, it's open for, maybe I'll get to planning. Could you just speak a little bit on this? Planning Minister, Richard, just a little bit. Teresa's not here. I know we talked about this in the work session, but you could just give us a couple bulleted.
Sure, and this is in response to just ongoing issues we had. It's a two-parter, there's tall grass vegetation and there's outdoor storage. So let me speak for, and the staff report has it broken into the two. For tall grass, essentially, it's allowing us to send one notification per growing season. That won't all come into play this year because they've already done notifications, but we'll start that. So basically, instead of sending a notification every time we have to cut a property, and we have 10, 12 every year like that, we do one notification. The first time we cut it, that serves notification for the year. The second part of that is,
Code of Virginia allows that.
yes, and I want to thank Mr. Cuomo working closely on this, on that part as well as the fee part, because I would have liked to charge more. And this basically addresses the need for us not to be a lawn service of choice. We don't need to be that. We don't need to be in competition with private lawn companies. So this here increases every time we cut the penalty, and as a civil penalty in addition to the cost for cutting, and it goes up. And of course it's capped. I would have preferred to gone up every time, but it is capped for state law. So, but it does add a little bit more disincentive for folks to say, go ahead and cut it. They can it really kind of forces them to find somebody to cut. So those are the two parts for the grass. We also took out the class 4 misdemeanor. That's just because you can't charge that and then do the civil penalty, so we prefer to have the civil penalty. Outdoor storage, it's really just adding some verbiage to make it easier for us to do enforcement. We basically add, other than just trash and debris for outdoor storage, we have a specific item like tires and household furniture and appliances and things of that nature that cause us a lot of issues. We also say we've added, you can't have outdoor storage of building materials for more than 60 days. That's been an ongoing issue. And then finally, we clarify that you cannot store in a carport porch, bed of a vehicle, and other places that are visible to the public, but right now aren't specifically captured in the order. So those are the 3 parts of outdoor storage, and then the 2 parts for the tall grass.
Thank you very much. Public hearing is open.
Hi, my name is Dr. Lisette Montaro. I own 4 properties in this town, sold 1, so now I have 3. 2 of them are rented. One of them, I have the neighbor from hell. I'm saying that because I may be one of those 10 properties that you send a zillion letters a year. Let me explain why. This last year alone, a car, my renter had a car. The car could not start. He brought a mechanic in. The mechanic said, it's better for you to get a new car. So he just moved the car in front of the house, went to CarMax, bought a new car, hired a crane to get the car, but since it was not an emergency and it was cheaper for them, they are a low-income family, they had to wait 2 days for the crane to come and get the car. I received a notification on the mail, even though they had already made the due diligence. By the time I received the notification in the mail and called them, the car was gone. Let me give you another example. I paid a contractor to clean the basement. We're one of the few houses that has a basement. I paid the contractor to clean the basement. We painted the floor and everything. We took everything that was on that basement. On that basement, we had some mattresses. We put the mattresses in the carport. This is over 2 days. They did the roof, they did the outside of the house, they cleaned everything. Okay, I spent $20,000 and I can show you the receipts of all the work they did in that house. This is 3 weeks ago. 3 months ago. I received a letter about the mattresses that were there. Those mattresses were there 2 days. And I know they were there 2 days because I was in town. I saw when the contractor put them there and when they were put them back. So, if you really have issues, you cannot change the people that live in town, and I cannot change my neighbor. But you can help me continue renting properties and having properties here, paying the higher taxes that I pay, and being a good tenant and getting good tenants that actually invest in this town. And you can help me by changing this code. Yes, you can change this code. You can change this code. Charge me every time that you send a letter. That will be extra revenue for you guys to source of money. Don't send one letter. Send me a letter every time that there is an instance. But charge me for that letter. You spend time writing that letter. You spend money mailing that letter. I'm okay changing that letter. So far, you've never been there to clean my yard or anything. We have taken care of everything. This is so ridiculous that that lady sent pictures to the town that were shown to me because there was bamboo from the neighbor in the back. And the bamboo had grown to the yard, to the yard, my house, and some leaves moved to her house. So she took picture of the leaves in the house going into, there's a fence, that is our fence, and she took pictures of that and she sent it to the town, so I got a letter for that. I don't own that bamboo. I don't have that bamboo. The bamboo I cannot eradicate because it's from the neighbor in the back, and actually the town owns the bamboo in the other yard, and that's a problem. So that's what I am trying to say. Please charge me for every time that you send a letter, but don't send me one letter because I don't know what's going on there, and I will need to go every time to that house to see what's going on there. And I don't think it's fair for my tenants or for myself. Thank you.
Mayor, if I can comment real quick, the vast majority of the properties where this applies to is either air property or property that's simply been abandoned, that we know going into the mowing season, these are properties we have to address. And that brings up another issue. Some of these, it'd be nice just to get those, to be able to get those properties changed into others' hands that would be able and willing to maintain the property. But so we know that no one's going to be mowing them, so we send out one notification just for have it for the record. So these typically aren't properties that spring up because a tenant didn't mow at one point.
This is, one notice is only for the grass though, right?
Yeah.
Anything
Correct.
else, you would send multiple notices.
Correct. It's just for
Okay, yeah, so,
And you're given an opportunity to correct. It's
right.
not-
So this is
it's
just
a-
for the grass incident, where the grass incident is a repetitive violation in one calendar year.
Yes, ma'am, do you understand that? This is only for your,
Yes,
for your
I
grass.
understand that, but I also understand that my tenant works at night, and when he comes home, he has to mow the lawn. And sometimes they have a very sick child, that sometimes they go to the ER, okay? And I cannot help it if the tenant next door gets the ruler, and I am not kidding, because they have sent me the pictures, and I know it's not the town, send me the picture when it's like a little over the mark. So, it's ridiculous. And to me, it's harassment, but honestly, I don't want to fight that fight. So I deal with the tenants. And it had happened multiple occasions. She works during the day, he works at night to be able to afford living here. And the kid is very sick. He had been multiple times hospitalized, has a lot of problems. So that's what I am saying. Charge me. You need money? There may be other people like me. I cannot be the only one. Charge me every time you send a letter. That's totally good.
There are a lot of people like you, and that's what's happened. And your tenant should be happy that he has a landlord who actually cares about the property. And what typically happens in these circumstances is we don't get any response, period. I mean, and it's at the point where the landlord and the property owner or tenant, whomever, has decided that it's cheaper for them just to let the town cut the property. And we got into the property cutting business for a long time, and it was time for it to end.
So hijack the prices. Make this profitable to the town, but not sending one note. Charge me for every note that you send. I find that fair.
Yeah.
Charge me for every note that you send. But if you need to cut if you need to cut the grass, then hijack the price. Charge me 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, we've raised the price sequentially for each time it's visited and needed to be done. But I feel for your situation, but the greater response and the greater need of the community is to follow through with this. And so we haven't voted yet, but
So I encourage everybody to make this a profit opportunity for the town. We are in a budget crunch, and this is your chance to actually get some revenue and pay for the work that the county, the town is doing, and charge the time that you use in creating these letters. And that will actually be a source of revenue for all of you, and it will be peace of mind for me. Thank you.
From a budgetary perspective, to support the ladies' thought process, I believe the additional charges that I believe council's getting ready to pass, one could see it as covering the administrative costs to send out letters through the process. So I think we might actually achieve that when it comes to the grass cutting through adopting this, because it will cover the administrative time and costs.
All right. So that's it for the public hearing? Okay, the public hearing's closed. Okay, is there a motion to approve 76?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I.
Aye.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
Ms. Roberson? Ms. Shea?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Public hearing number 707, conditional use permit gunsmith, 111 Marshall Avenue, tab I. I believe, I guess I'll let, Richard, you want to speak on this? I believe the planning commission's already had this as well.
Sure, we had a public hearing with a number of individuals in attendance and some really good discussion, public input. In result, the planning commission voted to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for 111 Marshall Avenue for the gunsmith. You see that in your ordinance, as well as in the staff report, the conditions that are recommended. The one additional item that the planning commission recommended was that there be no on-site business signage, as was alluded to previous items. I do want to point out, you can make a case on either side of this, and conditional home occupations and why they are conditional uses is sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't fit. We have minor home occupations, we have major home occupations. Given the fact of the nature of what this is, it's considered a major. Mr. Jett has been very cooperative in working with us to essentially treat this as a minor. A major allows or employees from outside the home to work at the property, as well as on-street or off-street parking. He is willing to abide by the restrictions that are via minor, to where there are no outside employees. So it's a very limited operation in terms of impact. There are some other things that he'll be restricted by virtue of his federal ATF permit, so as far as what he can do and so forth. Again, with a lot of discussion by the planning commission, good public input, and I feel confident recommending the conditional use permit as presented to you.
Okay. Thank you. Public hearing's open. Mr. Alan Adler.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the council on this application. My name is Alan Adler, and my wife Christine and I own the residential property and home at 113 Marshall Avenue, adjacent to the residential property and home at 111 Marshall that is the subject of the pending application. We have purchased that house over 15 years ago. We are still working towards getting towards retirement, where we hope to come down here to live in that house permanently, and we'll do so as soon as we are able, and that is the basis for our request to deny the requested permit. To be clear about two things. First, this is not an objection that has anything to do with ownership of guns in the town. or Second Amendment rights in the use of guns that are owned in the town. This is purely a dispute over a specific proposed land use that is inappropriate to the specific property's designation under the Colonial Beach zoning ordinance. And secondly, this is not a dispute about the character, intentions, or trustworthiness of the applicant, Mr. James Jett, whom my wife and I have known for some 15 years as a good neighbor, responsible businessman, and conscientious parent. But the problem with the Planning Commission's approach to this was they heard evidence presented by the members of the public who came forward to address the issue, primarily about Mr. Jett's character, which is not in dispute. The problem is that for a dispute over proposed use of land that is inconsistent with the ordinance that governs the uses of that land, character is really largely irrelevant. Basically, our concern about this is the fact that we think it presents it's basically adversely affecting the safety of residents in the neighborhood. It conflicts with the purposes of the comprehensive plan for Colonial Beach, and it would be detrimental to the public welfare and injurious to the current and future value of property in the neighborhood. You know about the Colonial Beach comprehensive plan, and you know about the discussions of Colonial Beach in terms of neighborhood preservation districts like the one encompassing the Point. And basically what it says about the Point in that plan is that preferred uses for these areas should be limited to single-family residential homes that maintain the character of the area, private boat piers, and parks. It talks about the fact that to the extent commercial use has been permitted on the Point, it has primarily been for maritime establishments such as marinas and boat docks, which are related to that intended use of the Point. Our concern is that the nature of the occupation of gunsmith, particularly in an isolated residential space of the Point, poses risks to public safety and ultimately to property values. Even if Mr. Jett conscientiously engages customers only by means of personal acquaintance or reference, or only by specific appointment, a gunsmith's services, once they're known to be available, can reasonably be expected to be sought out by individuals who are unknown to him, including by some whose background or other non-compliance with federal, state, local gun regulations may be hidden. Unwanted traffic to the location by such individuals inevitably poses safety risks to nearby residents and the potential threat of burglary and breaking and entering to the residential property houses. More importantly, once a precedent is set for a home-based gunsmith business, the opportunity for other individuals of different character than Mr. Jett to have their own such business will be much more difficult to deny based on the zoning criteria. And when it comes to the zoning criteria, although it mentions custom gunsmith within the guidelines for major home occupations, that term is undefined, and it stands out in the list because of its unique requirement of a federal license with background investigation and reporting requirements that reflect the unique need to address criminal law enforcement and public safety concerns in connection with that occupation that don't exist with any of the other occupations that are listed in those guidelines. In particular, I would note that the catch-all final category on that list, which includes all other activities in the opinion of the zoning administrator, which are materially similar to the activities listed above. None of those are materially similar to custom gunsmith because of the federal licensing and background investigation requirements. One more point I would mention. Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and the Federal Bureau of Justice Statistics have stated that firearms stolen during household burglaries and other property crimes amounted to, within a 5-year period from 2005 to 2010, some 1.4 million firearms stolen during household burglaries and other property crimes. That amounted to an average of 232,000 firearms stolen from homes each year. Yes, we could argue about the threat and the risk levels that are evidenced by these, but surely the relevant question ultimately is whether it is necessary or appropriate to give opportunity to any such threat or risk in an area of Colonial Beach like the Point. given the ongoing efforts and planning to preserve its historical and current residential characteristics as clearly detailed in the Colonial Beach zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. Thank you for allowing me to present these views. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Anybody have any questions from the staff? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Closes the public hearing portion. Yeah, I was gonna, do we already do a motion on this?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now it's open for discussion. Any discussion?
I just have one point. Coming from the planning commission, I can understand Mr. Adler's point with these things. I'm gonna vote aye to this because gunsmithing is physically listed as a conditional use permit available at this current moment. But I think that we should consider review of changing the ordinance to remove gunsmithing from R1 and R2 uses as home occupations. So I am going to advise the planning commission consider removal of conditional uses for future uses of this. There are others that already gunsmith on the point, so there is a precedent set also, but it's grandfathered in. So just want to note that too.
Any other discussion?
I have some discussion, Mr. Mayor. I'm gonna vote aye for this as well. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I've had a conversation with Mr. Jett. I think his intent was to do this and do this properly. I think this could be occurring at everybody's neighbor's house, and we not have any idea that it's going on. Mr. Adler, I do hear your concerns, and but again, I've known Mr. Jett since I've lived in this town, and again, you're exactly right. It has nothing to do with his character, but I think his mission was to do this right and do this by the book. And like I said, there's a lot of people that love firearms. I was a cop for 22 years. Up until a couple of years ago, I never carried off duty. I hated carrying the thing for 12 hours. But you know, in today's time, I do carry quite often. But it's neither here nor there. You can be for guns, against guns, whatever your mindset. I think where Mr. Jett's going with this, hopefully it won't be at his residence long. Maybe he'll seek out, as Ms. Schick said earlier, brick and mortar. You know, all these home occupancies start out your home. Pretty Pets is an example. You know, if she gets to booming, and maybe she's going to move into Rankin Shopping Center. Maybe Mr. Jett gets enough business to where he's going to move his home occupation into Rankin Shopping Center or another business building here. And I think we have to give him, because he is looking to do this the right way, give him the opportunity to have his own business and possibly move it out to where it may benefit the town.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, and thank you, Dallas. And I hear your concerns, and they're very sincere concerns, and I agree with your concerns. I will say that I think the fact that we're not allowing signage is a huge plus. I think the fact that Mr. Jett's intentions are to eventually take this to another location, and knowing what I know of Mr. Jett, that'll probably happen sooner than later, because he'll expand, I'm sure. The fact that it's not going to have signage and shouldn't be any more of a target than anyone else's home at this point in time. It's actually I kind of wish I knew what my neighbor had in their house. So, as far as weapons, guns, things like that, but I do understand what you're saying, and I think Ms. Schick makes a point that the precedent has been set. The planning commission approved it, and it's in the books as approvable. and taking the extra step of making it operation under the minor. He's going as farther to do the minor versus the major aspects of what's needed. I think is important. So that's all I have for discussion. Anyone else will bring up for a vote?
Mr. Mayor, call for the vote.
Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Ms. Roberson?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. All right, next public hearing is ordinance number 708, amends chapter 5, beaches, waterways, boardwalk park, recreational areas and facilities. Article 1 in general, section 5-9, activities prohibited on public beaches, parks, recreation, and parking areas or other public area within the town, tab J. That's a mouthful, so hope I won't read it. So with that, do you have anything you want to say on this before we start the public hearing? On public hearing 708?
Just I was a team player on this one.
Gotcha, okay. Public hearing's open. No one signed up for it. Does anybody in the audience have anything they want to interject? Okay, did you, yeah, come on. Go ahead.
Sign up.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to come up to the podium.
Oh, I think she's coming to talk about something else.
Are you coming to talk about the,
No, I think that's what she was just talking about.
yeah, the parks and recreation facilities? Yeah, come on. Yeah, you want to speak on the public hearing?
Yes, I didn't see a place to sign up earlier.
What's that?
She didn't see the paper.
Don't worry about it. No, you're welcome to speak.
Okay, and this is the right,
Yes.
okay. I just want to make sure, my name is Rebecca Hunt, and thank you very much for letting me speak. Part of the reason why I'm here is because the neighbors of Torrey Smith Park are asking for more signage and a few more things, and we had a meeting. We also wrote a letter as a neighborhood to present, which has already been emailed to the council. And so we are asking, well, first of all, we shared our concerns in the letter. We just want to reiterate that most of the items that we were asking for because of the concerns were already supposed to be put in place at a future time. So we are looking for a reset for the park before it opens. And we had some suggestions, which we had discussed before. And we were concerned about probably the main thing is maybe a new sign that would have an official opening time and a closing time. There seems to be some confusion as to when the park really closes at night, and we think that that would help with if the police are driving by or other people who are driving by or know exactly when the park is closed and not to enter the park. There are also some of the things that had been advised were cameras, which we're hoping that will be there too. We're hoping that through Parks and Management that the park will be managed in some way, supervised in some way, so that it's safe for everyone in the community to use the park, and that the way it was intended by the people who have donated money for the park. We would like to just see a great park there that everyone can use, and anyone who is not from Colonial Beach who would like to use the park, that it would be a good representation of Colonial Beach and also Colonial Beach school community, our kids here in Colonial Beach. So people in the neighborhood have come up with some concerns, and these are ideas that they have come up with, and I'm here speaking for them, the group. So we had cameras. It would be nice to have a drive-by when the park is closed, just to make sure that everyone is obeying the rules. The activities manager through Parks and Rec would be great. Supervision would be great. There are a lot of little children that are not supervised running around the park, outside of the park, in the street, and etc. And we had thought possibly a couple of neighbors had asked about maybe perhaps a resource officer from school, maybe attending at some point during the day to interact with the kids. It would be a great thing. Maybe eventually, if the signage doesn't work, then maybe eventually a gate. And that would let people know for sure that the time is, available to anyone to play and enjoy the courts and tennis courts and everything, that it would be a certain time that they could be there. And we just wanted to say that everybody that I've talked to about the park, or people that ask me questions, everyone loves the park. It is beautiful, and we do need a place for the kids to play here. And it's a wonderful thing to have. But as a neighborhood, we would like to see people take care of the park the way it was intended, and that everyone gets the opportunity to use the park. And so I'm hoping that these ideas will help as the park opens back up. And of course, any other suggestions from anyone else. We don't want to just complain. There have been complaints. But we want to try to offer solutions to the problem. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so that closes.
Mayor,
Yes,
could I just ask a question?
sure.
I'm Karen Sullivan. I live at 2010 Beach Avenue. This only addresses 5-9, not 5-10, as pertains to dogs on the beach. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because I didn't see if there was, I've got a copy of 5-10 on my computer, and this is just 5-9, so it's only 5-9. Okay,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close on the public hearing portion. We have a motion to approve this. We've done that. That's a motion to approve this. Is there a second? Yeah, no, we're discussion.
We'll open it for discussion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. A second. Okay. Second for discussion.
Okay. My only question on this is, 3.
Yeah.
There's no signs, like canopies, umbrellas, or shades that provide unrestricted view of occupants and clear view of ground are permitted on the beach. Do we have height limitations on things like that, or no? Sorry, do we have height limitations on things?
I don't think so.
No, it's just clearly, you've got to be able to see through it, so.
Yeah.
So the only things prohibited are tents that go all the way to the ground.
Okay.
That blocks
So that
views.
activity could happen, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Right.
Thank you.
That's the point.
Okay, going back to Becky's concerns with Torrey Smith Park. So, I couldn't agree more. What a great resource the park is. What a great way to get the park, all the additional effort for the community and the financing, and Torrey Smith donating so much money and all that. And, but I can't help but think it got a little bit ahead of us, quite frankly. We didn't really finish the deal, as they say. That we had a lot of ideas, and we just didn't complete them. I know we want cameras. I know that we're discussing cameras. I heard Robin discussing with Jim, our lawyer, several other things to consider that I think are extremely prudent and are great ideas. But the one thing that she mentioned that really stood out to me was putting a gate on it. And, you know, right now, I would either have PD or Public Works would go and open it up in the morning and lock it in the evening. Because dusk to dawn, it to me is an interpretation.
And one of the things Robert is going to.
Yeah, I mean, dusk to dawn to me is an interpretation. So, you know, your dawn and your dusk, mine, it might be different. So, we can fix that by, if you're in there and it's locked, then you know you're not supposed to be in there. It's pretty much like anything else. A door and a lock means if it's locked, you're not supposed to be there.
One of the,
Go ahead.
One of the things in the meeting, I sat in the meeting with Robin as well too, and Bruce was in there as well, and we discussed that the dusk to dawn thing was very difficult to deal with. So, as Ms. Hunt stated, times are what we thought we needed to look at directly, so you know that's enforceable. We did talk about gates in the meeting as well. I think the thought of the meeting was to try a couple of these other methods first before initiating the gates, or we even said something like a chain or something there where someone would go and unlock it and take it off so you know it was there. But the first intention was to begin with the times, a little more signage, to be able to enforce that. And of course the other idea is the cameras that we want to see go in and stuff like that. But I think the big thing with this particular ordinance we need to do is look at the times instead of dawn to dusk.
I want to propose some amendments.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay, that's fine. Okay.
So the first amendment to address the concerns that would happen in that meeting and other concerns. You have to realize this is a town code that applies to all beaches, waterways, boardwalk, park, recreational facilities, everything. So we kind of have to be a little bit broad about things. But I want to give some backing to what we promised to do here. The verbiage that's in 4, this is section 5-9A4, at the end of that says, unless otherwise allowed by special event permit, I'd like to move that to A, so that it applies to the whole list. So it will be, any person in violation of this section shall be subject up to a class 4 misdemeanor. Oh, well, I guess it will be, the following activities are prohibited unless otherwise allowed by special event permit.
Yeah, or.
Right, you see
Unless it's the very beginning.
Right, at the beginning of it. Yes, at the very beginning of A. That way, if you have a tent for the special event, because I feel like it applies to kind of all these. So that way it just blankets all the way down. So then it can get nixed from 4 because it applies to all of them. The next amendment is on 10, where it says town parks are open daily to the public from dawn to dusk. I want to add, or as posted on site. And that will allow us to put a time, exact time, open and close on a specific piece of property if we need to. Because we can't, we're not going to open and close the beach. You know what I mean? So, right. And then after 11, I have a couple additions. I want to add a 12, and this language I got from an example ordinance. I think I used Herndon, Virginia as an example because they were real short and succinct. And on 12, I want to add loudspeakers and noise devices. Excessive noises which disturb the peace and tranquility of a park will not be allowed. Permission by the town manager must be obtained if loudspeakers, electric noise devices, or other noise-making equipment are used. And then I want to add 13, which is injectment of persons violating this ordinance. The town police or any park attendant shall have the authority to eject from the park any person acting in violation of this ordinance. And then I want to add 14, which is disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace. No person in any park shall recklessly cause inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm to another by doing the following: engaging in fighting, threatening to harm, making unreasonable or offensive gestures, insulting, taunting, hindering or preventing the movement of persons in a public street, so you can't block the road, and creating a condition which is physically offensive to persons or presents the risk of physical harm. That's it. And then after we're done with this, I'd like to propose a resolution 23-20 to spend up to $15,000 of our rollover funds on a camera system implemented on publicly owned property.
Okay.
We can discuss all that.
Yeah. Did we get all that down?
I think so. Did you get it down?
Sure.
I thought I have, it's like literally the Herndon, we can send it to you. Yeah, I can see you. Just because it was kind of succinct and already written. It was already in somebody else's code. Yeah.
All right, so is there a motion to approve ordinance number 708 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, you got all that written down, right? We can always come back and add, we can always add amendments such as needed. And this will probably be a moving target anyway, as we see how things go, quite frankly, because we covered a lot there, but I think there's probably going to be some other issues that are going to come up that we're probably going to have to add to this as well. And I really feel, my heart of hearts tells me we're going to end up with a gate at some point in time. I really just think that's the end all, the fix all, right there, to put the gate up. Because then you're trespassing, and that's a crime. And we can put teeth in that as well. So, anyway. Okay, so, Bill, for vote, Mr. Alger.
Aye.
Mr. Ryan.
Aye.
Mr. Lehman.
Aye.
Ms. Roberson.
Aye.
Ms. Schick.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. All right, status update on coronavirus. Mr. Quinn.
I think everybody's noticed that while we're still in mask and experiencing the effects of COVID-19, that given other activities, at least at a national level, is kind of taking a little bit of the focus off of our current pandemic. We still find ourselves in phase 2. It's reasonable to believe that there is a possibility, notice all the hedging works, that we could get into phase 3 before the end of the month. Based off of the governor's initial timelines. In the spirit of that, what I wanted to bring to council is just to openly and also publicly say that we're still in a very fluid situation with COVID, and probably be digitally reaching out to you as the governor puts out more guidance on what we may loosen the restrictions on. And also wanted to bring up the fact that phase 2 also allows for certain events. We're going to have a couple of events this weekend. And they are within the governor's guidelines, the way we're going about them, and we're going to do special events as necessary. As individuals and event organizers begin to come back to the town with their requests for events, I will probably be looking for digital consensus, given the time sensitivity of getting something approved. We don't want to wait a month if we can do it within a calendar week. But really, pending your questions, I'm able to answer anything you might have in regards to COVID.
Is the thing on the green tonight?
Yes.
Good. Hope it's ratatouille or something like that. Yeah, mermaid thing. Good. Sounds like fun. Okay. Any questions for the town manager? Council? No? We'll open citizen input. Walter?
First of all, I'm going to talk about the bike trail, the golf cart path. I travel that more than anybody else. And I'm going to talk about benches that need to be placed on that path. 4 benches need to be placed on that path. We're asking the town to find 4 benches to be placed on that golf cart path. That's all we need. I'm gonna take you back on some history of this town. Back before I was even born, there was an orphanage operated by the Bell Home. And it is owned by a present owner, and this town needs to put a historic sign in front of that home. It's part of the history of this town. Just below it, they had a dance pavilion. It covered the whole block. It was huge. And when I was young, when I was in high school, we turned it into a basketball court. That's where we played basketball for years. And I would remind the town, Fairfax County opened up the parks for kids to play basketball last week in the swimming pools, and the town council needs recreation for our young kids. And we need to open up the basketball courts as soon as possible. And when I talk about this town, I refer this town as my town. Everybody should refer Colonial Beach as my town. Everybody. And I ride this town, and the bad town to clean up the beach has done a terrific job cleaning up the beach. And it's just phenomenal what the job has done, and I thank them boys every time I see them, and thanks goes a long ways. And the town needs to say thank you. And just one more thing. The senior citizens in this town, there's a business restaurant, and it's called Denson's. They teamed up with Bay Transit. Tuesdays and Thursdays, they deliver dinners to the senior citizens in this town. And I decided to, at this council meeting, to say thank you, Denson's. And And, you know, that goes a long ways. Thank you.
Jacqueline? Danny? Jenny? Fred? Steve? Joyce?
You're saving the best for last.
Hi, I'm Joyce Gunderson. I live at 919 Bryant Avenue. First, I want to say, 20 years ago, I was on the Board of Zoning Appeals in the county. And it came time for the vote. It was the 4 other districts or whatever, and then it was like Columbia Beach. And somebody in the crowd said, Columbia Beach doesn't matter. We don't need to have a vote. Sort of, and I was like, oh my God. So what Tim Tribbett is doing down there, and what you said, that county treats us like stepchildren. And so we have to hats off to y'all, to Tim, because it is very, very difficult. I don't think anybody that's not heard some of those really remarks know what he's up against. I hate to use that old thing, it's the good old boys down there, and we hate to say that. So we do have a struggle. So there's that. Next, Kathy, from all of us, we can't tell you how much we appreciate everything you've done. And the other Danny's not here, but gosh, Danny, just what Tim said, it was great to see his smile when I think we're the only town in wherever that really feels good when we hear the trash truck come by. So that's saying something for us, that the trash truck is really fun for us. Next thing I want to say, we want to congratulate our seniors. We had 11 are going off to college, 35 graduated. We would certainly like to see those figures be more for going off to higher education of some sort. It was great what they did with the signage all on down on the bleachers. And last but not least, what I'm really up here for is some of you know that I have some properties in town, and I would like to particularly think about doing something on Jackson Street. We would love to have them to have some speed humps, not bumps. And so I've talked with Quinn and with Rob. We've thrown it out, but they suggested that I come and let y'all know, and then y'all decide how we can go about it, what do we want to go about it as far as town. I know it's Jackson Street, it's probably Irving Avenue, it's those straightaway streets. Jackson Street does have sidewalks on both sides, and so it's a very wide street. I do know that there was truly drag racing down that street. I've got a tenant that's got a ring that can watch pretty much everything, and she is like Sherlock Holmes. So if anybody needs to look at her ring, just to let you know. I've got some things here are some of the speed humps, and they are VDOT approved. And the other one that is fabulous, and I sent this, is this median in the middle with some yummy stuff like a tree or something. And instead of me coming to everybody saying, what can y'all do for me? I am saying, I will do this. So let me set the precedent and let me do it. And then if any other streets need to be done, I'll do the fundraising, I'll do whatever. So I just need us to get the conversation going about how to slow people down, particularly on Jackson Street. So that's where I am as far as that, and I'm pleading with you on that. And then maybe if it goes there and we do a hump or a bump or something, then other people will want it on some of their other streets. Okay? I'll give this to who? Should I give it to you? Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Obviously, conversation you and Rob can have.
Yeah, look, I had to show and tell. I had to come with a hurt leg to show how speeders were speeding around and I had a wreck on my bicycle.
Oh, my God. So, yeah, I guess, is that a beat out road or? Yeah. Work your magic, figure out what you gotta do. All right. That's it, folks, unless we're gonna go to closed session, and I believe there is a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I would ask that the council go into closed session for 4 reasons. One, pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23711A3, for the disposition or acquisition of publicly held real property, for discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. And pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7, for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to probable and actual litigation, where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the litigating posture of the public body. That litigation being the litigation against the County of Westmoreland, the litigation against Barbara Camp, and the litigation involving the Sunset Cove. And I will ask for action on at least one of those matters when we come out of closed session.
Okay.
The other is pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel, and pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 for discussion of performance of specific public officers.
Okay. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Do we have,
Yeah, 5 minutes, 5 minutes only, it's 1:20, 1:25, we're gonna be in closed session.
Did you say that?